But you said, Rick is not. No. Uh-oh. So what else, John? I know exactly. Oh, gosh.
Have you guys seen this? This is the emergency services briefing after the water shut off. You saw it? Oh, because we didn't know.
That was pretty, the public had a meeting about it after.
Yeah, I made copies.
Here's Honda. I didn't get all the details of that. The lights are and I don't think they're gonna turn off. And it's kind of a copper.
It's brown.
Brown.
I looked to see if maybe they were at the Harvey Wallmaker there, but they weren't. So it might be good to announce it.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Okay. Well, it's fun. Yeah, there's a Honda CRV.
Oh, I think I
See, because I have a Honda CRV. At least I think this one. Brownish-ish, no, mine's red. Mine's maroon. It's a maroon. It's mine, it's not. Oh, it's red. Oh.
And she said something.
Still working on it. This is my damn fault for making it so stupid.
But with that one though, we don't need all these permits and other stuff.
Well, so the master plan doesn't have all that permitting, it's not a permitting zone, it's like, we would like to look at the growth and density in this area, we would like to look at modern nature, it doesn't actually play out into the rules. It just shapes the directions when we go through the rules.
Okay.
So some kind of thing.
Call John. Yes, I'm calling John. Calling his home phone. Yeah. He calls cell at the same time. I don't get it. Okay.
But Marissa Longworth, housing stuff, she's the project lead. She works
I don't know. I know Rick is not.
These funds. Oh.
Yeah. We want a contract.
Like that. How do you speak?
Are you coming?
I'm fine.
Oh.
So what is it?
Okay. I'm gonna wait a minute to start the meeting until you're here, because Rick is not coming, so we won't have, oh, no. We won't have a forum meeting.
Well, I think we can verify that.
It's all pretty nice.
Oh, yeah, we adopted. All right, touch base visit.
So I'm sitting over here now.
I'm getting so So we're gonna wait a minute to start the meeting because we don't have a quorum yet. And our last person is cutting and pasting his way into the Zoom meeting. So we're just gonna wait a minute. As our final question, we have discussed negatives in our work. No, it's written, not gonna hurt my feelings. The little owls will pick you up.
So you, okay,
No, please, go away. Oops, sorry.
Don't take it
I
personally.
do not take it personally at all.
Good.
I'm coming next to you.
Oh. These are our seats. Oh, gosh.
Sorry.
Able to yourself.
Spread out.
Oh, okay.
If you need to take a nap.
So true.
Yeah.
Well, I got my little welcome thing while we're waiting. Welcome, everyone. We are pleased to have you in attendance at this evening. We welcome your comments, questions, and suggestions. To address the board, please raise your hand and wait to be called on by the mayor. Then come to the podium, state your name and the street on which you live. Do we have a sign-up sheet up there? No, never mind about signing now. If you are on Zoom, please use the raise hand function to be recognized. All comments should be addressed to the mayor only and be no longer than 3 minutes. You may speak once on each agenda item at the beginning of the agenda item. Oh, there's none. It will help the board to hear and understand your comments if they are clear, concise, and respectful. Please present factual information. Personal attacks of any kind are not in order, as well as derogatory, demeaning statements about anyone, or speaking without being recognized by the chair, or speaking on topics not related to the agenda item being discussed, except during the public comment period. Questions or comments to the staff or board will not be answered during the meeting, but responded to later. Until you are called on by the mayor, please be respectful of those around you and those who have the floor by remaining silent. Please take any side conversations outside the room. Thank you. All right, now we can start the meeting. Start the allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, roll call, please.
Mary Lockhart,
Here.
Trustee Smith,
Here.
Trustee Valentine,
Here,
Trustee Marshall,
Here.
Trustee Knudsen,
Here.
Trustee Stover. We have a quorum.
All right, and continue. First item on the agenda is correspondence received. Is there anything more you'd like to act upon? All right, seeing none, let's move ahead with the approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion?
Move to approve the agenda.
Do we have a second?
I'll second, but I have comments. I have things I'd like to change.
Okay,
What I'd like to do is move item 10 and 12 to the top of the agenda. These were the two items we did not get to in the last meeting. And I think it would be good to ensure that we get them done at this meeting. And there may be people here who wanted to comment last time and couldn't. So I'd like to see, and it's recommendation for planning commission for zoning building proposed code changes and discussion of the CML request to oppose Senate Bill 23-213.
Okay, do
Just
you have a second on moving those items to the top of the agenda?
A second.
Any discussion? No?
Yeah, we have quite a few members of the public here. I was wondering if there might be a topic, another topic that we should move up to respect their time. I don't know why everybody's here.
We're out here for pickleball.
Pickleball, okay, that's already number one.
All right. Well, I know it's going to be number 3.
Cool. All right.
All right, looks like there's no other thing, so we have a motion to approve the agenda with moving items 10 and 12 above pickleball.
Or after pickleball. It doesn't matter to me, just so they're early.
Let's do after. Okay, after pickleball. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion carries. All right, next up is announcements. Does anyone have any announcements? Yes, Mr. Bruce.
Over Second Street Paonia. In light of the fact that the, how should I say it, the finance officer and treasurer has, well, we've learned that she didn't know what she was doing and the books were a mess and there's some question about where the money is and I have here a citizens initiative to require a forensic audit of the town's books for the last 2 years. And I wish you guys would be responsible and save us the trouble of gathering the signatures, because you know we will. So here it is. Please turn over a new leaf, come to your senses. There's not very much you have to do. You have to be fiduciaries for the public money, and you're supposed to work on the water moratorium. And the administration has failed miserably at both of those things.
Thank you, Mr. Bruce. All right. Any other announcements? All right. Yeah.
Are you gonna announce the planning meeting on Thursday?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, we are having our first open house planning. Dave, would you like to do this?
Sure.
I'm rather breathless in this now.
Our general plan has not been updated since 1996. And we are having a public session on Thursday here at Town Hall, starting at 5 o'clock. Pizza,
5 o'clock,
5
Yes,
o'clock,
that's
pizza will be served. 5:30 is when the session begins. But we want all citizens to be involved in getting this planning moved along. It's been a long time since we really updated the plan. It's way overdue. This is the first of 2 public sessions, and it's also a follow-on to the session we did last year, where we had over 50 citizens give us a lot of input. So that was part of the planning process. But we want as many people as possible to show up Thursday night. The session begins at 5:30, but pizza will be served early, and it's this coming Thursday here at Town Hall.
Do you want to add anything to that, Helen?
No, that's great. Thanks, Dave.
All right.
I just had a question whether that was going to be recorded.
It's not right now. If we need to, we can figure that out. Right now, it's just a public engagement session to collect feedback and share the process.
Did you hear that?
I did, and I'm wondering if it would be possible to record it because there'll be a lot of people who can't make it. Is
So
that,
we have some shaky
which means
cats.
overtime? I mean, I know that means you have to stay longer, but if you show me how to run it, because I plan to be here. Okay, thank you.
All
I
right.
think that'd be helpful to have that for posterity. Thanks.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a citizens water committee meeting tomorrow at 5:30. If anybody's interested. We do not currently have an agenda. I imagine we'll discuss flooding and maybe fixing leaks and I don't know what. But if you're interested in the current state of the water system, if you have questions for I guess me or anybody else who attends, Jeremiah typically, or I'm not sure what his title is at this time, but Jeremiah Garcia will be there also usually to answer questions. So they'll be tomorrow here at 5:30.
All right, thank you. Anything else? All right. Seeing none, let's move on to public comment. Anyone from the public would like to comment on anything that is not on the agenda? Yeah, what?
Suzanne Watson. So I saw the big dig under the railroad track on Delta Street. It's pretty amazing. Hopefully that's all fixed with our water line. But I'm wondering, is anything being done with a citizen that's 25 feet away? With the water line from the meter that goes, what was it, 50 feet across the railroad right away before it hits her property line? Is there any movement going toward mitigating that situation? Now that you know how expensive that was.
Well, I think we'll,
Thanks.
Can we wait till the administrator's
that's
report?
enough. We will update that.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else from the public, not on the agenda? All right, let's move forward then with the consent agenda. We have a motion to accept the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Sam, did you have a comment, please?
Yeah, so I made some changes to minutes that were in the packet. I'm sure you guys probably saw the same thing, so I just wanted it on the record. The March 14th minute, I had, under the administrator's report, I hadn't finished a sentence. So now that, I can't remember the rest of the sentence, but it's about the Survey Monkey thing, and I changed that sentence to add the priorities identified during the work session, because that's what the Survey Monkey thing was about. On the March 28th ones on page 32, I inserted the agenda item title behind the numbers. And I also added trustee Smith's vote of aye under the topic of the town administrator. I had missed hers. And then I reworded a word under the school discussion to flow better. So it says she doesn't feel like it's worth the issues that have caused public distrust. So those were pretty major changes. So I just wanted to make sure they were on record.
Okay. Any further discussion from the board? Yeah.
I have a question on one of the liquor license renewals, and it's the Curiel. It's on page, let's see, 59, I think. And my only question is, I don't see a tax check authorization waiver request for release information form associated with that particular liquor license. So I just didn't know if that was an oversight or they don't need that form. There was this same state form is associated with the other two. So I just wanted to make sure that it was complete, and maybe that one was left out or it's not needed. I don't.
Yeah, the application is complete. That just might have gotten like fed through the scanner or something like that. But everything that's needed for the application for the state is there.
Thank you.
All right. We have a motion and a second to accept the disbursements or is the consent agenda all in favor?
Could I add,
Yeah.
just bring up disbursements as well, a couple things in disbursements. And what I want to bring up is that as I was going through meeting minutes, we had made a motion that we would like to know which department each staff person is in when their pay is given to us in the disbursements, and Sam will be doing that in the future. It's a Cassell thing that needs to be sorted through. So I just wanted to bring that up because it was a motion made by us a couple meetings ago, and it will be forthcoming. And then I just have to ask if anybody had any questions about any of the invoices in there.
Just as a comment, not really about the substance, but I did notice that there's a lot more detail. And this, I guess, several lists of disbursements. And I was wondering, like, I like that. I guess that's most of my comment. I'd like to see more detail, and I appreciate the change that's happened already.
Yeah, and if I can add, so previously, when we would get with Cindy, she would have all those invoices. It would be a total check, one check for all of those, and all those invoices would be attached to be looked at. But I have to say, I like this better. It takes longer. Mary and I have been doing it. But it allows us to see every invoice and see what is being paid for. And I also want to point out that each of these invoices require a lot of allocation to various funds. And that's also found. You'll see the fund allocations in some of these sheets that are in here. And that will continue until we have these funds get put into new numerical groupings. So hopefully we can maintain that allocation and representation of the fund number that the money is being spent through, but that's probably going to change, which means I'm going to have to learn a whole new set of numbers, but that's okay. So anyway, yes, it is a different way to do it, and I'm glad to hear you like it. And I'm kind of, for those that do look at disbursements in the public, was it also advantageous to see each individual invoice for the vendor? Okay, thanks.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to accept the consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, that motion passes. Next,
Comment real quick. I wanted to make a note that the owls are in place. I think this is the first meeting we're using them, and I wanted to thank Ruben and Sam for setting these up. Who was it? Ruben and Mary. And Mary, okay.
yeah,
For setting these up. I was curious, the people that are watching it from on home, what's your reaction so far? Because we just started using. I'd like to just hear. John, what do you see?
We need to turn down the sensitivity a little bit. It's jumping around quite a bit. That's okay. That's fixable.
I want to add on that to thank John for doing the research and getting all this purchased.
yeah, the only thing we have left to do is to get I was researching this today because we couldn't get the speakers set up that John had purchased. But in my research, it looks like the owls themselves are speakers. And it's just, I have to get with support, the owl support, to see if we can do that. Because we have them working, but there was a significant lag. So I'd say something and then there would be silence and then the owls would say it. Which is not helpful. So we're gonna get that figured out. And then if we need to, we'll return the other speakers or figure out another something for it. But at least we got half of it done. All right. Moving on. Staff report. Leslie.
Okay. I did not, as you know, I was working less hours last week, so I didn't get a staff report into the packet, so I just handed one out. And the first thing I want to address is the flooding hazards, because it's our most important thing that we're watching right now. We do expect record flooding. The snowpack is over 200%. And if we get some hot weather, it's not going to be good. So what I want to read to everybody is what we've already put on our website. If you go to the website, on the very top of the homepage is a red banner, and you can click there and we will have all the updated flood information. And I also want to thank Ruben Santiago, his daughter Trinity Santiago, and Candy Woollett, who stuffed over 1,200 envelopes to send out to residents, businesses, and water and ditch companies. So we have to take this seriously, and it's everybody's responsibility. You know, we've had some people want us to come up and fix their flooding. We are not going to be able to do it on a case-by-case basis. So what you can do is sign up for the Delta County alerts. If you just Google that, you should be able to go to that website and sign up, because that's how our police department will be updating the community. They're going to use that, that particular program. If you know that you are at any risk for flooding, you should purchase sandbags now and not wait, because once the flooding starts, I mean, we literally realized that we had to be more aggressive on, I think it was a week and a half ago, Wednesday, and that day we saw our first flooding. So it's real. So if you've got that situation, you can buy them at Dependable Lumber and Payoneer Farm and Supply. And I called both of those entities to let them know we were putting That down, and both of them plan to order more sandbags, so there would be enough for everybody. There's a couple of biggest things. Here's a biggest thing. Maintain and monitor your ditches and culverts. We had flooding in a neighborhood today where some ditches or culverts got plugged up and it makes the water back up. It can't go anywhere. And that almost has to be done daily. You know, if you've got a ditch or a culvert, check it daily to make sure there's no debris in it, because that's what really causes the most flooding. If you see any evidence of floodwaters, please call our police department immediately on their non-911 number, and dispatch will send out somebody. You need to let them know the exact location where you're seeing floodwater. Because what we're trying to do is, if it floods, we want to check to see if there's a debris cause for it, and what we can do to divert it away from property. And then also look out for your neighbors. Some people, if there is evacuation necessary, some people may not be able to handle moving quickly or whatever, so know your neighbors and help out if you can. And then the biggest problem that we talked about, we had an emergency, kind of our own local emergency management meeting, is that kids are known to go up to the riverbank and look down to see how high the water is. This year, because we've had droughts, it's a big danger of bank collapse and really rapid erosion. So standing near the riverbanks is dangerous, and kids need to know that because they probably don't have the experience to know that dirt can fall away in a minute. So please, if you've got kids, talk to them about it. I know the police chief was planning to go to the school and talk to the kids about being safe during this flood season. So please keep up with the latest news. If we get hot water or hot weather, you know that we're probably going to see the water levels rise very rapidly. The board priority survey, usually I would do an analysis for you so that you could make a quick change, but we've had quite a few different things going on and I've not been able to do that. So if you have some input tonight, otherwise I'll try and do some analysis for you at some point, but we're proceeding on what we know are priorities anyway. Water and sewer improvements. So this was really good news, and I'm going to let Corey fill in the details, but today at our water and sewer meeting, the leak under the railroad tracks was repaired, and it must have been a monumental leak because we're seeing a monumental change in the amount of available water. So Corey, do you want to go into what you're seeing at the tank?
Yeah, can you guys hear me okay? So before we got that leak fixed, the plant would shut down at night for roughly around 4 hours. And since we fixed that leak, the plant has been shut down anywhere from 7 to 9 hours per night. So, and it's shutting off less frequently, or like more frequently than it was before. We don't have definitive data yet on how much water we are saving. We just know from that it's definitely was a major leak. And
yeah, Corey, you're cutting in and out. It might be the internet. Sure. So what that means when we shut down longer is it shuts down when it's full. So, and then it comes back on when it's not full to fill up the tank. And because we're getting so much more water since we repaired this leak, it's shutting down for double the time. So that was, we thought it was over 1 million gallons a day, and it probably was. So a big improvement. And then Corey, can you hear us? He's muted.
yep, I can hear you. I'm trying to get closer to the internet.
Okay, do you want to ask a question, Thomas?
Yeah, no, Corey, I had a question about that, same thing that, Ms. Watson brought up in community time. That is, if, you guys had made any progress on repairing or replacing that meter pit at the same intersection there where that leak was at Delta and the railroad tracks?
We did discuss it some. It would require another drill to be brought out, and we have to drill from the side of the tracks over through another property into property.
So Corey, you're cutting out again, so I'll kind of explain. The problem is that we have to go on another private property to fix it. And we're gonna try and get permission to do it, but that's our obstacle right now. Nope. Okay, next thing. JDS Hydro is going to do a moratorium lift update at the next board meeting. Because as we're getting new data, we're repairing leaks, we have new information about what we can do. On May 4th, we're having a workshop for the board with our regional manager, Dina Levesque. I'm learning how to pronounce that, and that'll be at 5:30. I have an update on our financial management data. First of all, I want to dispel these rumors that we're missing money. We are not, as far as I can tell, we are not missing money. It's our accounting system, and I know it's really hard for lay people to understand what I mean by accounting system. Government accounts are set up a certain way so that you can track your spending and your revenue and your spending. And ours have been set up in a way that you can't track it easily because it's all been separated. So this morning, and let me explain it, because I have actually been through an embezzlement, not one in Paonia, but a much bigger one in Glenwood Springs. And you pull in forensic accountants when you have an evidence that there is theft. We have no evidence and no indication there was any theft. So if by chance we went across something, of course we would do that. That would be our first move. But we've been working this out with CERSA, our insurer, with advice from professional management systems and our police department. And there is no reason to hire a forensic accountant, and they are very expensive. That'll be a big expenditure if the town has to go to that. And probably CERSA will cover it, but there's no reason to right at this point. So I just want to dispel that rumor, and I know that people are kind of traumatized about what happened 13 years ago, but we have no indication that's the case. So the funds, we had a meeting today with Michelle, and Ruben and Sam and Amanda were on a meeting because we want to kind of make sure we're covering daily and monthly duties and assign the proper internal controls. And the funds the way they're probably going to shake out is we'll have the governmental funds, which will be the general fund and the conservation trust fund. That's it. No bridge fund, no sidewalk fund, no any of that.
Sidewalk fund is separate in our code.
Right, and we'll be asking to take that out.
Okay.
Because if you have a fee, it's a revenue stream. If you have a dedicated tax, then it probably needs its own fund. But those are called special funds. So the conservation trust fund has to be separate per state statute. We have 3 enterprise funds, though they will remain: water, sewer, and trash. And then we have a special fund, which is your capital improvement fund, which has a sales tax in it for capital improvements. So that we can reduce those funds down to 6. And that'll make it a lot easier for you to get a budget to actual and a lot easier to do the accounting. The other thing that will change is all the revenue will be stated at the top of each fund. And underneath it, if there's any departments like, let's use wastewater because it's simpler. There's a collection system and a treatment function. And those will be in separate categories to show expenses. And then each fund will have a bottom column that is capital improvements. And that's where you actually expend the money. And in order to expend the money, you transfer the capital improvement funds into the fund that it's expended out of. So those will be changes. They may sound like they're drastic, but this is the way everybody else does it, and it's a lot easier to track. And so you'll see in the general fund, even though we are gonna have a lot of departments, we're gonna have police and streets and bridges and sidewalks and all that stuff. There will only be one section for capital improvements. It will be all government funding capital improvements. So it'll be a lot easier to do. Michelle and I are working on that together because it's not as easy as just, sitting down one day and restructuring them. We have to figure out where the funding comes from, where things should go. And we hope to have that done by mid-May, and then we'll start the reordering of the accounting system. And we haven't decided yet where it is more cost effective for professional management systems or Cassell to do that. But I'm hoping that we will have a first financial report for you at the end of June. That you have out of Cassell its budget actuals. We've got a couple of cost savings things that I wanted to mention. We want to hire ADP to do payroll, and that contract is on your agenda today. It's much cheaper to have them do it than to have a skilled staff member do it, and that's a really highly skilled function that we have not always gotten right. So we just need somebody that knows how to do it and just turns it out. And ADP, I've worked with them before. They're really good and they're cost effective. And then Sam has been working with Point and Pay. That will also reduce the amount of staff time once that gets in. And then we're really close to being able to feed the digital reads straight into the system without hand entering them. And that will save a tremendous amount of staff time. So we're going to probably be cutting staff hours way down, and I'll discuss a restructuring of the finance functions with you later on that. Let's see. And then I just wanted to remind you that I'm leaving tomorrow for Glenwood for the City County Managers Conference, and then I'll be in Pittsburgh till Monday, but I will be watching my phone, except at 3 o'clock on Friday Eastern time, in which I will be watching my daughter graduate. And I just want to mention that Tammy Mack knows my ex-husband really well.
Okay, questions from the board? Yes.
I don't think everyone in the public knows who Michelle is, and maybe you could explain what's going on with that.
So Michelle Duran, I think she's told us she was the finance director for Rifle for 32 years. She's very well respected, and now she works for this group called Professional Management Systems that assists towns when they need extra help with professional management things or interim kinds of positions. And I think the staff has been working with her great. I mean, they have already come far farther than she thought they would. And they're handling all the cash receiving and everything is going great. And she just thinks our admin staff is stellar, but I already believe that. So.
And two more questions.
Yeah.
First of all, it's almost been baffling to me to watch our budgets where rather than seeing here is property tax receipts. And what I was used to seeing in other governments is tracking how well it's coming in.
Right.
Instead, what we've been seeing is a piece of property tax at the general fund, at the police, all these other places that makes absolutely no sense. So I'm assuming that's going to be bundled so we can watch what property taxes are, what sales taxes are, those kind of things, and see the trends in them. And then the second thing was projects. Like when you talk about the capital funds, are the projects going to be listed in the capital funds?
Yes.
So that we'll be able to see, okay, these are the projects we have planned, because that helps us with the priorities. We haven't been able to.
Yeah, and the mistake that I saw in your accounting system, I have seen in other towns that didn't have experienced people in governmental accounting, is they've been tracked by grant.
Mhm.
And grant is revenue. Grant is not a project, it's a funding for a project. So, and you don't rarely get 100% grant, so you track it by project, but what's funding that is the grant and the general fund or an enterprise fund or any other grants you have. So that's, if we were, it looked like we had a whole separate fund for grants, and that's just a revenue stream.
Okay.
It's
And
not
then,
that complicated.
and then the town is holding some donated funds for the skate park. So if you could keep an eye on those, because the pool parks and rec district is kind of concerned about making sure that in all of this reshuffling, that money is still intact. So there were donations, private donations that were held by the city.
I understand that that they're there, and we did check those.
Good.
I don't know where they are. I have to ask Michelle to find them right now.
Yeah.
Once we get in, move things around, that would be like in parks.
Okay.
I might be able to help with
Yeah.
that later,
Yeah,
because I am familiar with that.
yeah, that, we have
Yeah.
checked on those to make sure those funds were there before, so as I said before, there is no evidence we are missing funds.
Yeah.
None.
No, I didn't think so either.
I almost think they're in their own bank account. I could be wrong, but if I go back and look through old stuff, I can probably find it. And then I have a question about one other tax that we have that's very different is that occupational tax at $5 from every pot sale.
Right,
And that has specific
There's
projects
streets.
assigned to. Well, the ballot kind of had a longer list.
yeah.
So are you going to be able to track the
Yeah.
income from that and the spending
Yeah.
separately?
So the way Casell does that is when you enter in an expense, say for sidewalks, you assign it revenue streams, and it will automatically break it out into the revenue streams. I mean, Casell is wonderful, we just weren't using it. Yeah, I did want to mention on the consolidating the bank accounts, Michelle's going to do that sooner rather than later. We just sent her all the bank statements so she can figure out what those funds were for, and then we're gonna consolidate it into a checking account and investment accounts, and it'll be much easier.
Because we just approved an investment account that gave us a much higher interest rate.
We haven't switched that yet, just
Okay.
because we didn't want to touch anything until we were sure that we knew exactly what was in there, but I think we're far enough along there.
Anything else? All right, let's move on to, no, we're not taking questions. You can approach Leslie and email questions for later. Yeah, Sam, anything on your report?
No, I just wanted to give you updates on a few of the projects you guys knew I was working on and explain why the different disbursements look so different. I'm glad you like them. It's purely accidental that you have that much detail. I just didn't want you guys to make it look any different, so, but noted.
Okay,
Yeah, while we're at it, likewise with the minutes, I like the detail and I appreciate the effort that you put into it. It shows you. Thank you.
all right. So let's move on then to other items. Number one, consideration of approval of pickleball tournament at Apple Valley Park. Mr. Hupkey.
Hi. My apologies for not having this sent in and submitted to you earlier, but
Watch our wires.
yeah, I'll do my best not to kill the owls.
Yeah, don't see yourself either in the process.
They only had 9 lives and I took one.
So yeah, so I'm Max Hepke with the Northport Pool Park and Recreation District. And we would like to host a pickleball tournament this summer. We have a real strong community of people who use those courts in Apple Valley. And I've been in discussion with them since last fall about this idea. They really floated the idea of having a tournament. And we've been meeting about every other week since early this year to really kind of dial in what that would look like. So when we came to you guys, we can have a better idea what we're proposing here. So we've really dialed in a doubles tournament. Pickleball is separated by degrees of skill. So there'd be 6 different brackets. And we'd like to just host it in a single day. That's all pretty normal for a pickleball tournament. And the more and more we met with these guys, they really wanted to make it a unique experience, a unique pickleball tournament that stood out from the other pickleball tournaments. And that's where they came up with some of these other aspects to it that would draw in other community members and get people involved to come and stay, even if they weren't, if pickleball wasn't necessarily the thing. And so some of those things include that we'd love to have food vendors. First of all, we'd love to have like the taco truck. It's pretty standard to provide lunch at pickleball tournaments. So we'd like to have that as an option. But yeah, we, really kind of thought outside the box, and the committee they would really like to have things like some music. They'd like to have an alcohol vendor. And, we really want to ask for your guidance and ask for your guys' opinion on these different other aspects to maybe the more superfluous things on top of the pickleball tournament itself. So we're happy to field any questions you may have for me.
Okay, well, first we're going to take citizen input. So would anyone like to comment on the pickleball tournament from the public? Okay. All right, you come up to the podium, state your name. And approximately where you live, and then you have 3 minutes.
My name is Rand Cokerno. I live in Midway, Hotchkiss. As I'm sure you guys know, pickleball is hot. It's the fastest growing sport in the world. We're now 40% more players than there were 2 years ago. So holding a tournament here will put Paonia on the pickleball map. People who are traveling will do a search for towns they want to go to that have pickleball courts. So it would economically, it would be good for us. We'd sell gasoline, we'd sell food, rooms for the night. And it's just a good sport. It's a good sport. It used to be called the old people's sport, but now we have young people playing, and sometimes the old guys kick their butts. Yeah. So I would hope that you would approve of this and all the benefits that will come with hosting this. Thanks.
Thank you. Yep.
Hi, Patrick McCarney, 43 Pan American Avenue. I'm a board member of the Learning Council, the treasurer. So I started playing pickleball and it completely changed my life. I have some back issues and I couldn't exercise very much. And once I started playing, it was something that I wasn't getting hurt or aggravated doing. So I started playing all the time because I was feeling better health-wise. And I got to know a lot of people. There's many more players than are sitting here. And simultaneously, I thought it was beautiful because some of our work at the Learning Council was about cross-generational experiences and how to get younger people with older people and share and break those boundaries. And so all of a sudden, I'm seeing that in pickleball happening naturally. So it's like, oh, this is my work at the Learning Council in part, and it's happening here with pickleball. So to expound on the vision a little bit is we're in Paonia, we're remote. So I thought if people are going to come to a tournament, it'd be great to show them Paonia flavor, because people come here and love what Paonia is about. And so I thought pickleball should be no different. We're not Grand Junction, we're not Denver, so we're not going to have the biggest, most competitive tournament there is. But what we can offer is people to come to Paonia and feel that experience of Paonia. And so that's why it's important to have our local foods and our local alcohol and local music to showcase when people come and they walk back and they go, this is a great family event. And also I thought it would be really cool to do a park event at Apple Valley, because everything's always at the town park, which is wonderful. But it would be something unique to the residents here to be able to have a different event happening there, because to my knowledge, there's not really anything that's like a full day event that happens at Apple Valley. So I think that's about it for me.
All right, thank you. Yes, sir.
Steve Bulick, Vista Drive. So like Rand, I've been playing pickleball here for over 10 years. And I've watched pickleball in comparison with tennis over all these years. I used to be a tennis player like some others. And pickleball has gone from being hardly anybody 10 years ago to majority of people, as far as I can tell, far more pickleball players than tennis players. So if you're wondering if pickleball is really an important thing, it's the main sport here now that I can see. So I just wanted to let you know that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, you all know me, Helen Rose Gender, I live at, over in Silverleaf, right by Mountain Meadow, off of Third and Clark. And, I play pickleball. So I also, similar to Pat, had a physical injury that has constrained my activities, and it's a sport I can play. It's walking distance from my house. And I, may or may not compete in the competition, but what I really loved about it is that I was new. I'd never played before. I never played tennis. And the community has, because of the support from the town and the county, free paddles and the nets out there. So it was a way to get involved with a sport at no cost to start with me, and kind of help me get back into playing sports and now playing with my community. And what I really love about it is that it is open and we are really welcoming, and part of our flavor is to be really open and welcoming. Some people take it very seriously, we take it seriously enough. And I'm hoping that with this event, what we'll also do is more people in Paonia will see it and come out, you know, for something in the park that day to get some tacos or to hear a little local band play. It's not a nighttime event, it's just a daytime event, just to be clear. And that those people will get to talk to us. We're gonna have a little table there to talk about pickleball and get people more involved, and you know, just let them know that they can come and play and that it's a free recreational resource that the town and the county are supporting and offering. So I'm excited that we'll be able to do it. It's also a really great cultural integration. Folks from lots of different backgrounds come to play. And so that's also a nice bridge in sometimes a divided culture, both politically and economically. So that's my 2 cents for pickleball, and we are happy to adjust the application as needed, but really hope that you all will approve it. The last plug I'll put in is it's really great to have working bathrooms. And I know that the park bathrooms are due for an update. I've heard that there's money in the budget for it, but it's a staff time issue. We're gonna have to bring in porta potties for the event if we don't have those bathrooms working. So it'd be an awesome opportunity to get those bathrooms working for the park in general. And I think that'd be nice to serve the neighborhood in the long term. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, seeing none, questions from the board, Commissioner? Yes.
First of all, what's the difference between just using the park, and this is more a staff question, and what they're requesting, which is a special event park permit?
So it's basically the same. I think it's just because since it's a new event, one that hasn't been done before, they kind of just wanted to get it on a radar and make sure before they started taking off that it was something you guys were even comfortable with. The way our special events are set up, you're often asking for permission before you have a lot of the documentation that people want to see, and a lot of people are a little nervous about, okay, well, should I buy this insurance? What if they say no? And so I think it was just kind of communicating something new. I think that's the only difference to it, and it's in a park that doesn't normally see events like this, so.
Yeah.
So then my question, just as a follow-up, because this is what I was thinking, is we would see the details in that event permit. Do you think there's anything in that permit currently that would not cover anything they propose to do? It doesn't sound like it to me, but
I think
because we already have music.
yeah, I think the only thing might be is I think some homes are closer to Apple Valley Park than they might be at the town park, but again, it's a daytime event.
They're right across, my parents live directly across from town park.
So, yeah, but that's the only thing I can see, just because it's not normal. I don't think it would be a problem.
Right, and that's what I was thinking. As I was reading this, I should have gotten out have you looked at the special event application.
Yeah.
To make sure, is there anything in there that you feel like the application isn't asking you the right question?
No, I feel like that's all, basically what I wanted to do is, get the feeler out, see what you guys supported. My board, you know, is willing to support whatever you guys are willing to support, you know, so if in the event there was an aspect of this you guys did not support, you know, our board would side with you on that, and then we would adjust the application. So kind of like Sam was saying, I've pretty much got the application completely done, but just really wanted to make sure we were in agreement of what we were applying for before. So it's already teed up, and whatever you guys approve tonight, I'll come bother Sam tomorrow or later this week and get it submitted to you guys so you have it all in writing.
Yes, Tom.
Yeah, a couple things, just in general, it sounds awesome. I think that if possible, as you guys move forward, if you can keep it community focused rather than tourism focused, that would probably be better in my view. Regarding specifics and technicalities, Corey, do you know if we have a time frame for fixing those toilets? Are you with us?
I still need to find a plumber that can actually fit in those bathrooms. None of my guys are able to fit back there and really determine what is going on with that plumbing between the two bathrooms.
Okay.
Is my audio any better?
Yes, much better.
But that's been something I've already been currently working at to try to get those addressed.
Okay, thank you. All right, so toilets, hours, do you have actual hours figured out yet?
Start time will be determined a little bit by how many registrants we get, like how early we need to start to be able to complete the games. You know, we are prepared to, if we need to play into the evening, we could have the lights, but we wouldn't have the band would be done by 7 or, you know. Yeah.
And I assume you're familiar with the requirements for insurance and alcohol sales. There's a couple of formalities that have to be.
Yeah, that's something that is new to me, so that's something I would have to dial in with Sam.
Okay, cool. Yeah, you may contact the learning councils on several of these or other groups around town might be able to help you out with if you'd like to. And are you guys taking any like bets or any awards or anything like that?
Yeah, trophies, but no like cash prizes.
Okay, go ahead and say my money's on the robot. If that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, my only concern would be the special event liquor license. There are some timing issues with that. I'm not sure. You're gonna have to, I think, kind of push it on that.
Well, and we were just talking about that today, as a special events liquor license may not be something they can do. They may instead have to go for like an on premises and not have an alcohol in there at all. So that we were just talking about that today. There's plenty of details, and that's all gonna come to you guys, so.
Right.
I think it's kind of a funny nuance because we're a special district, not necessarily a nonprofit. So
Yeah.
so we'll have to dial that in.
Yeah. It sounds like the board's pretty much for you, so.
Okay.
All right,
Awesome.
all right, take care.
Yeah, thank you so much.
We look forward to seeing the permit.
Cool. Yeah.
All right.
In my marathon days, we used to have an adage, and I heard about the people that are elderly like myself. And us runners that were in the 40-year age group used to finish ahead of the 20s and 30s. And we would turn around and say, once again, old age and treachery is triumph over youth and enthusiasm. So anyway, good luck with that tournament. It sounds like a really great event. I want to make sure that you're really clear about roping off the alcohol and being consistent with the other events that we've had in the parks, like Cherry Days, that it's under the same kind of restrictions that we have for the other events that are in our parks.
Okay.
So, sounds good.
Cool.
All right.
Do we need a motion for this?
No, they will come back to us with the special event permit. We will have to vote. All right, next, recommendation from the planning commission for zoning and building proposed code changes.
Did you give us a page number on that? I
Um,
was there and I just bounced past it.
hold on,
Hang on, I can probably get myself there.
I'll find it myself.
It is on page 282.
All right, so this came back from the planning commission for quite a while ago. And has been waiting to come to the board. So the planning commission went through everything. So back, gosh, I can't remember when it was originally moved. I think it was 2015, 2016, something like that. Something like that. Anyhow, it was originally moved from zoning into building, and so the planning commission went through it article by article and looked at it and decided whether it needed to go back into the zoning code or remain in the building code. And this is what we went through, and these are the decisions that we made based on what we saw as whether it was a zoning issue or whether it was a building issue. And so the board's decision is to, do we want to move these back into the sections that we have identified? We want to move them back into the zoning code or leave them where they are in the building code? We want to move it en masse or something else. And Steve Prasad, who is a building contractor, was an integral part of this, looking at this and going and saying, this is a building issue, this is a zoning issue, this is a building issue, this is a zoning issue. So it wasn't just, some of us rubes just going, whatever. So first, I'm going to take a comment from the public. Yes, Susan.
Well, I'm sorry, my comment's not gonna be very good because my computer's dead. And that's where all my detailed notes are written, so.
Do you want to see? You want to see it?
Yeah, that would be helpful.
Hang on, I'll just.
Can I just?
Yep. just look at that.
So I'll try to go from memory, but at the same time, I can see the different proposals, okay. Okay, the first one is chapter 18, article 6 signs. And that's one that's being split at this point, where you're saying the first half can go back to zoning. The second half should stay in building. If you look at the 18-7-16, well, I thought it was 60. Anyway, 18-7-60, I thought it was.
The numbering is off. The
Okay.
section number is off.
Okay, so, you look at that and they have to do with the location of the signs on property. That's absolutely has to do with land use. Land use, if you read the reason for land development regulations in the state statute, have to do with the height, the density, the bulk, the location of structures on property. It's everything to do with land use. So they all, and then we have non-conforming signs. Well, we have an ordinance in the land use code about non-conforming buildings. It belongs in land use code. The building code that you've adopted, we now have probably a few thousand pages of building code with all the new codes we've adopted. They deal with the physical construction of signs. This had to do with zoning, where things are placed on people's property. So it all needs to go back. I do want to say the planning commission needs some training on land use, and I'm sorry to say that. I feel frustrated having to come before you. I'm not an expert. I just read these things a lot, and I've gone to trainings too, and I feel uncomfortable because I'm not an expert. But I would like more attention to this. Okay, so the other thing was the accessory building. buildings, structures and uses, there, I don't see anything in that section, Article 9, that has to do with physical construction of buildings. Again, it has to do with location on the property, the height. The height has to do with casting shadows on your neighbor's property, whatever. It doesn't have to do with physical construction. Building permit and site review. That
Your
needs,
time is up, and I'm gonna give you an extra 2 minutes.
thank you. That needs to go back to the zoning code. If you go to the international code that we've adopted, R 106.2 in the International Building Code has a section on site plan review by the building inspector. And he's reviewing things, they ask for a diagram. He's reviewing things for maybe how close houses are located together, because he's got to think of the fire code and how the physical construction. But this is reviewed by the town administrator, who knows the zoning code to make sure that they're complying with our standards. So that needs to go back to the zoning. And then I want to say, if you read I think it's the second article in the land use code that we have, the zoning code. And I do like to call it land use because I think the average person doesn't understand what land use, that zoning actually means land use. But if you read it, it says our land use plan is based on our comprehensive plan. They go hand in hand. So if you take a chunk of the land use ordinances out of the land use code, the zoning code, and put them in building, you've just gutted the comprehensive plan. And I think this is something that really needs some attention. We're starting to do a comprehensive plan again, but we've kind of got a gutted land use code. So this is really important just to restore it to how it was. I think there's a little, also variances, sign variances. You don't have variances in the building code. Variances are a land use action, and you can't split them into other parts of the municipal code. You can't use it. So there are some issues with the wording for planning commission doing variances, and that's some old language that's a little confusing that needs to be looked at. But I think the first thing you need to do is restore this. Restore it back to the way it was. It was done by professionals, advised by professionals, and it needs to go back. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, anything else from the public? Yeah, Mr. Burke.
So Bill Brenner again. I want to thank Ms. Watson for her very lucid comments. And I want to take issue with the mayor that I think this was done by a bunch of rubes. I think that this is a prime example of what's wrong with a lot of our town code, is it's been hacked at by a bunch of people that don't have any business or any idea of what's going on for so long that there's a lot of problems now. And I think the first thing that the planning commission should do is get some training. They should spend several months examining our codes and the statutes behind them, trying to learn exactly what their job is and what the constraints on their purpose is. And after they've done that, then they should take a look at our code, and they should come up with a bunch of questions that they should get some really solid professional help on. Because to go at it the way it's being done, it's like so much that's happened over the last few years, you're just going to make it worse. So please send it back, do some education, and have another hack at it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Question from the board. Yeah.
Well, I almost want to make a motion and then discuss it. I'd like to make a motion that all of these sections be taken in total back to the zoning chapter. That's my motion.
All right, we have a second.
Could you clarify on all of these sections?
Yes, all of these should go back in, and for the reasons Ms. Watson said. But one of the other things is, when I worked on our building code, I deliberately reordered these sections to go to the end of that chapter so they could be pulled out and moved into zoning cleanly. And I did that because I read through them and realized these were all zoning issues. So at this point, I think it all should be moved back. And then get it in there cleanly. Some of it needs to be rewritten, like Suzanne talked about the variance, which is wrong. And the way our code is wrong about the planning commission doing variances. So what I'm suggesting is move it all back in. You have it all in total in the zoning chapter, so you can read everything from Article 1 all the way to Article 10, see it in total. If you see anything that looks odd, then fix it. But to pick and choose these pieces now, we are creating a mess.
I'll second.
All right, for the discussion for the vote. Yes, Dave.
I think we have a professional that's probably stronger in these issues than any of us sitting in the room. I'd like to hear from her.
I think that we already know all this that you're presenting. There's a lot more wrong with your zoning and building code structure and contents that I think both Nick and Dan and I would love to change. The problem is it's so messed up, it's going to take time. And to do it piecemeal is going to do exactly what you've got now, a piecemeal code where people didn't look, they put in a section and they didn't look to see what their section says, so they, you know. So I know this is going to take time. The good thing on our side is we have very little development now because we have this water moratorium, is that you give us the chance to put a comprehensive code revision together. You know, Nick and I were talking today about the utilities code, which is also got all kinds of stuff we need to fix. But they were changed over years by well-meaning people. I will call myself the chief rube, if that's what we're calling the well-meaning people, but they just, you know, like, I think Dick and I talked about you at the beginning, is you want code language to be written by attorneys and planners and people that know how to write code language, not, you know, the planning commission. They're codes can't be written by people who don't have a lot of training in that, because what you end up with is a code that may have all kinds of risk and hard to interpret things in it. And I mean, I'm going to bring up the moratorium language. One of the reasons we revised the moratorium language is because it was so difficult to interpret. So we've got to look at this comprehensively, and I just feel like doing it piecemeal is going right back to the way we did everything.
So I would like to withdraw my motion and table this. Not continue it necessarily, table it until we have the benefit of Nick and Leslie.
And I want to add on to that we've said this repeatedly. We have been on public record as saying that the codes need to be rewritten. And at this point, you know, I looked at the land use codes. So zoning and land use don't equal each other. There's land use and zoning's under it, buildings under it. There's all these categories under it. But I looked at them and I was appalled when I tried to interpret them. And we've already talked to you about the need for revisions, but you can't do it piecemeal, because we're going to end up back where we were. We've got to take a comprehensive look, reorder it so it's easy to interpret. I mean, right now, if you have to look up your parking spaces, you got to really, I mean, even just the way it's graphically laid out is really hard to determine which uses have which parking spaces. So that's my caution. I think the planning commission is exactly right. And I think we all know that. We've talked about that. The other thing I want to mention is that I don't think Mr. Bruner was there, but Suzanne was, that we did do land use training. And that you can look at that YouTube of the training, and you can get the handbook, which is quite long, and it's pulled directly from what I consider the best Colorado land use law book by a friend, John Elliott, who's an attorney, that's his specialty. And so that information is available, but planning commission should not be writing codes.
Yeah, if I may again, so given that your time with us is going to be limited, Do we want to consider doing this by contract? And rather than having Nick, who we already keep Nick pretty busy, do have our land use building code, well, chapter 1. Do we need to do our code rewrite by contract?
Well, what we've talked about, Nick and I, is that I can put together the draft, but you have to have an attorney's review. I mean, if I write codes for other organizations, but there's always an attorney on the contract to read the final review. So.
Can Nick do it though? Do we have Nick, do we have you so busy that to do this too?
We can't do it right now.
I would just say I would need some ample time, and meaning, there are just things that come up that need to be addressed sooner sometimes. So once I have that draft in my possession though, it would flow pretty quickly from there. But, time is the real problem when it comes to anything. So, but yeah, I'm confident that once that draft gets prepared, the review will be pretty quick.
I tell the planning commission that we will not have any more sewer line collapses to let the sewer line know. Just time that we freed up to do.
Well, we're walking around town talking to them, they're not
That's
listening.
right, they're being insubordinate.
So with that in mind, while we have you as interim administrator, do you feel like you have time to do a draft, or is that something we may ask you to do when you no longer are interim administrator?
I could possibly I started on it, and then everything,
Yes, blew up.
sewer line collapse, now we're flooding, blah, blah, blah. So I may have some time, after May, and then hopefully you're getting a permit, and then I'll have plenty. But it's, the problem right now is that we've just had a number of unexpected things that take a tremendous amount of time. But I have a sewer loan almost written. We've got to make a couple of changes with some additions, and then I'll send it in, and then mostly we have our major grants done. So we're making progress. It's just that we got an extra workload that we didn't write into the plan.
I'll just not all do it. Okay, well, so I withdraw my motion.
Right. Yeah.
So has our revision of the IBC been adopted?
Yeah.
Okay, my understanding was that a previous board had determined that our building inspector was to be replaced, and that the town administrator at that time decided that the board direction was not to be followed until we had revised the IBC. So now that that is complete, are we not looking for a new building?
The plan was to have a shared building inspector with Cedar Edge and Delta.
Right.
Delta then lost their building inspector. Now, as to
They have an
when,
advertisement up to hire.
so they don't have one yet. So we can't move forward on the shared building inspector until that happens. So we would have to look for our own building inspector if we were to change companies.
And I don't know if you want to make that many changes, because Delta has an ad up right now for a full-time building inspector. So as soon as they get one, we'll implement the plan. They just don't have it right now. They're having a contract too.
Are we in contact with them? Are they aware of this?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah?
Elise was the one that let us know the bad news as we were moving toward that, and she said that their building inspector had resigned, so.
Okay.
And I'll add that we have that intergovernmental agreement that was approved, I think, the end of 21.
Right.
With Delta for the building
Yeah,
inspector.
and one of the causes of that was that we update the IBC.
So
we did.
And I don't know, it might help if we reinvigorate that IGA so people can see it. And I don't know that you've ever seen it as a trustee.
I don't think so.
Would it be helpful? Because I think I was just on when that was approved in December of 21, the IGA, intergovernmental agreement. So
On the building inspector.
right, so I don't know, it might be good to somehow get that back out in the front of our brains. that we have that waiting for a building inspector.
Yep.
But everything, I think the bugs were worked out in that IGA, we just needed the person.
We just needed the two things, we needed to get the IGC,
Yeah, and we got that
we
done.
got that passed, and then just before we got that passed, they'll fill out their.
Yeah, but, and my point is that the IGA seemed pretty complete,
Yeah.
that they would be certain days, how it was gonna be, how we could be billed, et cetera. But if you haven't seen it, it might be something good for the trustees that weren't here at the time to see. Would that be helpful?
I don't know, probably not, honestly, yeah.
Well,
Everything's in place, we just don't have
But
a person to do
Yeah.
the work.
all right, well then let's move on to number 12, discussion of the CML request proposed Senate Bill 23-213.
Okay, so I'm gonna start it out and Nick is gonna talk mostly. I did want to point out that CML sent us an update on this. And apparently, oh, well, gosh, I lost it. Anyway, Representative Barbara, somebody,
Oh, right, yeah.
Republican, wrote I guess an incredible opinion piece for the Colorado Sun opposing this measure. And you may think because of the title of this measure, it's a good thing because it says affordable housing. It has nothing to do with affordable housing. It really is a way to put the control of land use decisions, particularly zoning, in the hands of the state. And I can tell you, I'm from California, there are certain things that I don't mind are in the hands of the state in California. Subdivision regulations are controlled by the state, and that makes them all the same. So they're not different for every place. But with zoning and other kinds of land use things, you need to be adopting them based on what your community plan is and what your community wants to be. Otherwise, we kind of have this homogeneous communities that are all the same. So local control is something that CML, which we're a member of, Colorado Municipal League, very much fights for, and that's why they are going after this full force. You've noticed they've had other legislation, but they've never gone to this extent of having this many meetings and saying, you need to testify at, at the Capitol and all this kind of stuff. So I'll let Nick explain more in depth what the problems are with this particular bill.
Sure. Yeah. So, yeah, that's. I'll just echo what Leslie said to begin with. Local control is a huge issue, particularly when it comes to CML's position as representing municipalities. More specifically, one of the issues with this is it does nothing really to guarantee any level of affordable housing. The state passed a number of bills last year that were aimed at providing funding for affordable and workforce housing, but then followed it up with these mandates that are in this particular bill. What the impacts that you would have on Paonia are limited as compared with the impacts that it would have on some larger municipalities. I'm wondering if somebody has their computer unmuted or something. That's why we're hearing the echo. Let's see. Can you guys hear me all right?
Breaking up a little bit, breaking up, yeah.
Okay. I like the picture, by the way, that's coming up on the owl, but the sound is it does sound like there are some things that need to be worked out. Okay. All right. Well, I will continue, and if you can't hear me, stop me. So the main impacts that this bill would have on Paonia are it would mandate accessory dwelling units on every single family home lot. That would be a permitted use. So you could see much higher density within town limits. For a lot of reasons, affordable or accessory dwelling units might be a good thing for Paonia. The trouble is you lose a lot of your control over actually see them built out, where to locate them. They've limited the setbacks that you can require. A lot of municipalities in their accessory dwelling unit provisions have mandated higher setbacks in order to make it still feel like a single family home community. This bill would effectively eliminate that ability. And then the other issue is it doesn't take into account utilities, municipal utilities that serve these properties. And as we all know, there's a water moratorium in effect, and the town certainly has a limited water supply that we're working on figuring out the ins and outs of. This bill does have an exception when a municipality can show and demonstrate that there is actually a water supply or water infrastructure issue that's that actually would create an undue burden on municipalities having to allow this higher density. But you have to take a proactive step of submitting that proof to the state before you can say, well, we can't do it. You have to show them that that's true. So that's the local control that it would take away from the town of Paonia. Just by way of comparison, there are a lot of other mandates that would affect larger communities. They call it middle housing. Anywhere in larger communities where single family homes are allowed, you now would have to authorize up to a sixplex, as they call it, six unit multifamily development on a lot of single family home lots if they're sized well enough to support it. So I think best for Paonia is to focus on the accessory dwelling unit provisions. I think that the town was headed there based on what I've seen anyway. But I think we want to do it in a sensible way that's right for the town of Paonia and not mandated through the state. So Leslie, I don't know if you have anything to add that I forgot. But if not,
Yeah. Pretty much the chatter on the manager's list is that everybody is sending in opposition and a lot of towns are sending representatives to oppose. And I understand a few of you sent individually, since we haven't voted on it as a town yet, some opposition, but I think it is important and local control is what's at stake.
Okay. Comment from the public? Yeah, there's one.
I was listening to public radio and they had that Denver program, the Patty, the westward lady, I don't know if you know that one. But it just sounds like it's so wildly unpopular. I don't even see how they could pass. But I do want to say, when we think about accessory dwelling units, there are people with backyards that actually have gardens because they want to grow their own food. And I think especially in this valley, that might be a little bit something you see more than in Denver. So sunlight and what you could lose by doing this also is it's kind of bizarre that this type of overreach from a big city could possibly hit us like this. I can't see it happening and I hope it doesn't. And I thank you for your support to write against it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Yes, Dave.
I think the letter that is in the packet is too strongly worded. It has some like attack wording, attack on this, attack on that. I really think that the board should just pass a motion that we're against the word, but using words like fervently and assumptions about what the intent of the legislation is, I think goes a little bit too far. I've been seeing in the Colorado Sun that there's also been some backtracking on this, and some people even today had said that possibly some of the provisions that are so onerous have been taken out of the bill, and some people have now said they support it. So I think we want to go on record on. I'd like to make a motion that we go on record proposing the bill as it stood in its form, but not with this letter that's so inflammatory.
All right, we have a second.
I'll second just for discussion.
Thank you.
Okay, But that, does that go toward the resolution then, or does it just go?
I didn't see the same kind of language in the resolution. Let me look at that a little more closely.
Because just for us to sit here and say, yep,
No,
we're
no,
against it
okay.
without doing anything else.
I'm fine with the resolution, I'm not fine with the letter.
Got it.
And I would say, I agree with Dave, I was kind of surprised by some of the language, but I think the letter is a good one if those words, the fervent and attack were just watered down a little bit. I think the letter's good.
Destroyed.
You know, we want to fervently declare, just need to declare. In fact, it is a sweeping attack. In fact, it undermines local decision-making authority. That would be how I would write a letter like this. So if it could be rewritten and just toned down a little bit, I'm all for the letter and the resolution. But I agree with Dave that it just seems a little too strong.
Is the letter needed? I mean, if we're passing a resolution, isn't that enough, and that's what goes?
Well, yeah, well, I think the reason why CML wants us to send a letter is that's the first thing they read.
Right.
I didn't hear that.
The first thing they read.
Oh,
Yeah. It doesn't have all the legalese. And it's really that first two paragraphs, I think, that are just a little stronger than I would send.
And I disagree, I think it needs to be stronger worded.
What's the motion?
The motion is that the town opposes the legislation.
and passes the resolution. Well,
Yeah.
let me withdraw the motion. We'll start.
That's a good plan.
So, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the resolution as mentioned in the packet. And that we, delegate the writing the letter to Paige and myself. Because I think we agree on it.
Yeah, there are just certain words that
All
we
right,
take.
well, let's get a second on that. So we have a motion to accept the resolution and delegate the letter writing to Paige and Dave. Do we have a second on that?
Oh, a second.
Okay. All right. You have a comment, Tom?
Yeah, I think the letter's fine as it is. I don't think that, I mean, the overall effect is gonna be tremendously different with like whether or not those particular words are combative or what's the dialectic? But I think the mood of the resolution stands, you know, basically we're against this in general. And it seems like most of the state is against this in general, so I doubt it's gonna pass, but we should probably add our voice to everybody else's as well. And just as a matter of expedience, I kind of feel like we should just send it as it is, get it done.
Okay. Anything else?
John?
Okay.
Did John?
I don't. John?
Yeah, he just permitted.
Oh.
No.
Okay, could you be a little more specific about it?
Thanks, John.
I'm gonna go vote on. Hide the man there, John. All right, I'm gonna call for a vote. All in favor of the motion to accept the resolution and have David Page rewrite the letter? Aye.
Aye.
I'm gonna say nay.
Okay, opposed? Nay. All right, I'm gonna vote nay. All right. Can we restate the motion? Yeah.
Yeah, I move that we approve the letter and resolution as written.
All in favor?
I need a second first.
Oh, second.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, that motion passes. All right.
It's like,
Okay, we'll print that sucker out and I'll get it signed and sent out. All right.
Now
next
we're
up.
back to number 2.
We have review and consideration of the approval of the urban rural continuing contract.
Can you say
have the final and the red line copy?
do you have a page number?
81, starts a little bit before 81.
Thank you.
78.
Thank you.
Don't forget, you can go to the top and click.
I
on
know,
it.
but
Yeah,
by the time I get to the top and get,
and you push home, and it'll take you right
All
to
right.
the top.
Comments from the public?
There's links.
This is our master plan. No, this is our housing needs assessment company. This is the contract for them. Yes, this is what.
So again, I don't have any notes. But I do want to say one thing that jumped out at me. I like the fact that they said they could do a mailing. And I don't know, it was kind of redlined in the last packet, but it was there in this packet. And I want to say I appreciate that. Because when you just base everything on social gatherings, you really are marginalizing a section of the population who, I mean, I don't know exactly what you would do with the mailing, if it would just be informational, like there's a survey available. But I think we're spending a lot of money on this, it's $70,000, and it's really important. And it would be good to try to contact people any way you can. I mean, if people are busy because they have work lives and they don't have time to trot down to town hall for a meeting, because they are splitting their busy schedule between cooking dinner for their kids and going to work or grocery shopping. There are people who are just social outcasts. There are people who are homebound, maybe, you know, with disabilities. There are people with mental issues. I mean, there's so many people who aren't into social gatherings that you are kind of disenfranchising. And I think this is too important for that. And I do want to say mail is the gold standard for flood notices. We've just found out, we're making sure we contact people. And also we vote by mail. It's the way we make sure we contact the homes in town. I was a little wondering about this, like private talks with businesses. Is there a way to have private talks with residences? I mean, or people who live in this town, residents? I mean, what if you want to talk about the burden of costs in this town and you don't want to like spill your heart to the public? You know, so it would be kind of nice to have some frank way of talking to these people, so they really understand a broad section of people's positions that are coming from this act. And then I kind of wonder if this is, they're going to tell us what our projected growth is by 2028, but what are the local objectives? What is the town wanting to do as far as growth? I mean, it's like, it's funny, they're telling us what to expect, but what's that based on? I mean, so it's a little arbitrary, it seems like. Is that really our plan, to keep growing and growing? Why do we want to grow? Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you. Anything else? All right. Board, somebody want to make a motion?
Yes, we are. I'd like to make a motion that we approve the contract for a professional services agreement between the town of Paonia and Urban Rural Continuum LLC.
Second,
Second.
discussion from the board?
yeah, Thomas, why don't you go first?
Sure. I assume that the appendix A, or what are we calling it?
Oh, that's.
Exhibit
services?
A, is the actual proposal from.
Yeah, that was,
Yes.
yeah. that was
Okay,
okay.
and the total on that has a couple of optional add-ins totaling $8,760. Do we have a statement as to whether or not we are opting for those?
We're not opting for them now.
We will decide at a later time if we want this or not.
Okay, we're not, can we have that noted somehow that,
Let me revise the motion. I'd like to make a motion that we approve the contract without the added option add-ins.
Who seconded that?
I did.
You want to agree with that?
That's fine. Thank you. Aside from that, it seems pretty boilerplate. And regarding, I guess, Ms. Watson's comments, I want to echo the sentiment that the focus here should be on the citizens of this town rather than outside nearby residents in the county or businesses even. that we should, if possible, reach out to people who I feel like a lot of the changes that I've seen in the past few years have displaced a lot of people, and I don't know if it's right to include them in this or if it would be productive, but I kind of feel like there's knowledge that we would miss if we don't somehow include people who have lived here for a long time but moved away or been displaced in some fashion. And to find out why. But the focus on this, I just want to try and make sure that we don't end up getting, I don't want to get pushed around by people who aren't our constituents.
Anything else, on the board? Yeah.
I noticed on, and I'm looking at page 79, that under the scope of services, section 3.0, there is not the identical requirement that they coordinate with the master plan contractor, as was in the master plan contract that they have to coordinate with the housing plan contractor. And I think it's important to get that statement in this section of the scope of services, because we do want that cross communication. And I believe it was in the contract, which I think was in the February 14th meeting. And I'm just saying, Nick, if you wouldn't mind, I didn't extract out the sentence, but there's a specific requirement that they confer. So do you feel like it's necessary that it be in this contract as well to confer back?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, trustee. Yeah. Well, yeah, if the board wants to adopt a motion to that effect, I'd be happy to add that into the contract. And I don't think that the contractor will take issue with that requirement.
They won't.
And then I just had another point to bring up that I believe it's in the scope of work that they talked about putting 2 trustees on the committee, which I think is a fine idea. But I wondered if one of those trustees should be designated as the person providing direction to the contractors as needed, as opposed to the mayor.
Well, and that was the question that we were going to bring up as well.
Okay, good.
Because Dave and I have been, and we were going to ask if somebody else wanted to take one of the positions.
And I think that would be a good idea. Let it be one of the 2 people on the committee, and I'm assuming you don't want to be on the committee.
I wouldn't be averse to losing one of my jobs.
That's what I was thinking. So that's kind of why I brought it up. And I don't know if, because we don't have a contract yet, it's probably premature to choose the 2 trustees.
Well,
So
we can choose those trustees. That has nothing to do with the contract.
okay, so then I would say whoever the 2 trustees are, one of them be designated as the person providing direction, as opposed to you. So because if you're part of the committee, you're going to be a little bit more involved in the process of the writing of this document, is my thinking. So I volunteer to be one of the committee.
Oh, I was that.
Well, one thing I want to point out is, originally Mary and I were both doing the general plan. Because we're on the planning committee.
Right.
So the thing was, we have to have coordination, so I would volunteer to work with you. Because since I'm on the general plan committee, it made more sense that I'm also on this committee, so that there is even more coordination.
Unless someone else would rather do it, I'm happy to give up my spot that I'm volunteering for.
Sounds like it's yours.
Okay.
All right, excellent.
So maybe put my name in that spot in the contract instead.
And get your calendar out, because you're meeting with them at 10:30 on Friday.
No good deed goes
Well,
unpunished.
when we met with them initially to get this ready, Mary and I met with them because we're part of the general plan, we also met with them on this. And what we said is, hey, if the board's approving this on Tuesday, let's get rolling right away, and let's get this on our schedule.
No, I'm good. I'm being facetious, that's fine.
I know.
All right, so you have anything else? Anything else?
Just as a comment, I feel like I can be too close to this process as a conflict of interest with short-term rentals.
Right.
So my involvement I'd have to recuse myself in a large portion of the project.
Okay. All right, so any other comments on the contract?
No, that was it. Thank you.
Okay, so we have some changes need to be made to the contract, and if you are cognizant of those.
Well, we haven't voted on
Thank
actual
you.
changes. We should do the motion first and then make a motion to add that other change.
So
and
we
then
have
make
a motion on the table.
table to approve the contract. We need an amendment to the motion to
The
add,
changes.
the coordination clause to the contract.
Yeah.
And to designate, trustee Smith and myself, it says trustee Stelter.
I know, that's right.
Trustee Smith and myself to serve as the coordinators.
They both serve
But I remember your last name.
I know, it was good. I'm kidding.
Okay, so we have amendment to the main motion to make the two changes. Do we have a second to that amendment?
Second?
All right, all in favor of that amendment?
We have a question.
Yeah.
The motion on the table also included to approve the contract without the optional add-ons.
Right.
Just you want to put that in there.
All right, so all in favor of the amendment?
I,
All right, now back to the main motion, which is to approve the contract without the two add-ons and then the addition of the two amendments. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, now motion passed. All right, moving on to the decision to repeal or send to special election, section 1 of ordinance 2023-02. Mr. Bruner.
Is this a 2-minute statement or am I part of this discussion?
Well, you get your 5 minutes to do whatever you want to, and then we get to ask you questions, or the public gets done it, and we get to ask you questions.
5 minutes ago.
I don't really have anything to say.
Okay then, public comment. Anyone like to say anything? Comments from the public? Yeah, is that?
Just to give you some, Shirley Patterson, Rio Grande Avenue, just to give you some idea of the responses of the general public when they were approached to sign. They were very eager to sign. People, the public in town of Paonia appreciate the moratorium. They realize the necessity of the moratorium and the necessity to correct the discrepancies of the moratorium so that it prevents things like what you wanted to do, Eric. Development, low income, in a old school. I thought that was, I'll say, just crazy to get involved with something like that at this time without any kind of consideration for the public and what they're thinking and feeling and wanting. The services first and foremost, corrected and functioning. Less increases in costs and fees. And obeying the law, for example.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? Yes, Ms. Ball.
I just really appreciate the fact that we have this moratorium in place right now. And, you know, any inkling that it's being loosened at all makes me a little bit nervous because, I mean, I realize eventually we do want to look at this, but you can see how much seems to be kind of broken in this town that we're discovering, you know, between the whole, well, the land use code, it's broken now, apparently, it's terrible. And it's even, anyway, the whole finance officer situation, the fact that we don't have an administrator right now, and I know that we've got this great public works staff, we're making really good headway with some of these repairs and stuff, but there's so much still coming down the pipe with this, and to proceed very slowly and not try to like fiddle with language too much is, I think, really important right now, because to be very deliberate and pensive is, it's just my style, I guess. It's important to make the right decision instead of acting in haste because we feel pressured by something. Thanks.
Thank you. Anything else? All right, we're discussion. Yes. Ms. Woodward.
I just wanna, I'm really confused by this referendum because I think it ties down the restrictions. The problem that I had before is the only way that I can interpret that original language is that it restricted the amount of taps, not meters. And if you go to another section, you can have more than 1 meter on the tap. So I had already told one person prior to Nick and I bringing up this discussion to you, that they could build a second unit because it was in their home and they were having 1 tap. And if the tap was properly sized for 2 units, was allowed by zoning, but they would have to separately meter it. They didn't need another tap. This makes it clear that no, we can't extend water. And let me tell you, we've been very clear and we're saying no weekly to people who want us to interpret it the old way, the way that it was originally written. And so I am not clear if people want us, the more restrictive moratorium that they thought they passed, why they would be opposed to this language from an interpretation standpoint. And what I've heard is the argument is that the intention wasn't for it to be that way. But when I interpret a code, if I don't interpret what's written in our code, and it goes to court, doesn't matter what people intended. It matters what's in the code. So that's my 2 cents. I'm worried about going back to the time when I have an argument from somebody that they bought a tap and they intended to put 3 units on it. Now they can't. I mean, yeah, because that we have addressed the meter situation and said no new water service. And my response to numerous people, and I know some of you are aware that we've been through some pretty strenuous discussions with attorneys being hired, and we've held our ground that we're weakening the moratorium by pulling this new ordinance off the table. So I understand people thought that they were voting for something else, but we have to go by the way it's written. We can't go by the way people thought it was written.
Yeah, Tom.
I was wondering if Nick had any input on the language here and how it might compare to his interpretation of what exists already.
Yeah, I'll just say that what the intent was with this ordinance that we called the ordinance clarifying the water moratorium was to inject clarity into it and not to change anything. And it was in large part intended to allow the staff to be able to answer the questions that developers and property owners had when they wanted to do something with their property. We thought that it resulted in that clarification. And Leslie, I'll just echo what she said about property owners who've retained attorneys have come to the town, and we've been able to point to provisions of the ordinance clarifying the water moratorium in order to tell them yes or no. And it's been much easier to administrate by being able to point to language that we've drafted that we thought clarified the moratorium. So that is where we've landed on this.
And I want to point out further that in one particular case with an attorney on the opposing the town, they argued that the new language had not gone into effect, so they could use the old language to build something that I know that would not make the town happy. So there seems to be a disagreement with the way that we interpret that language legally and how people are perceiving that it was. I don't understand this thing that we were loosening things up because we were tightening things.
At this point, I would make a statement.
Okay.
Please do.
So there's three reasons that I personally oppose this change. Number one, it's a bad idea to let the board monkey around with a citizen enacted ordinance. It's bad precedent. Number two, this clarification ties the water moratorium to two of the worst parts of the water ordinance. Number one, it talks about pipe sizes. There is a table in the defective ordinance that lays out a price for various sizes of pipe, but there is no objective criteria for what pipe size will serve what purpose. It says the town will decide. That's just not good. And then it ties the moratorium to the section about individual meters. And from what I've been able to see, that is the most violated ordinance probably in the entire town. It says that everybody has to put in a separate meter. Who's been forced to put in a separate meter for a second unit on their property? Tell me one person. So now you want to tell me that now you're going to start enforcing that part of the ordinance? I'm sorry, I don't believe it. Okay? Now, as far as the good news about your clarification is that it added a section that the attorney that I had write this left out, and that is this ordinance trumps for any interpretation, the language in this part of the ordinance will rule. And so that means there was a clarification about the definition of the tap. It's now perfectly clear. For the purposes of this, it is only what's written in the moratorium. And it is both the common meaning of tap as the right to the water and the physical connection. Okay, and it says you can't extend the tap and line. And you can't put in a meter without extending a line. So you can't approve or allow an extra unit on an existing tap without extending the line to the meter. You can't do that. It says you can't extend the line. I don't understand the confusion. I don't think there is any. So tell me what the confusion is.
The problem is we've already been over this, is the fact that your moratorium says service line and there is no definition for service line in.
Then write a definition for service line and you've got a clarification.
It has to do with the town, not the individual household. So, because Bill, this has been a problem.
Okay.
People have been allowed to add more water usage in their homes because of that term service line.
And I don't have any problem with someone adding a bathroom or a bed. That's not the issue.
And
the issue was living units.
And that was being done as well.
I know, in
Because
violation of the
it
moratorium.
didn't require a tap. And to me, the biggest part of this problem is the code and the use of meters and what is it, water line? Is a very awful thing. But so tell me why, in your mind, you just heard the fights that have been going on in town hall, and the new ordinance has kept new uses being added to the water system. Why is that not a compelling
Well, so
reason?
tell me the use that's not been added.
I can't discuss individual applications. That's
Right.
Well, then I can't really respond.
yeah.
But you have just heard.
This is
that
not fair.
The
Unless
town,
you trust us.
yeah, the town was given a tool that wasn't there before, Bill. And our attorney and interim administrator have been able to shut down people adding more water usage on the system. So I don't understand what you think you're gonna gain by going back to the old language, which was just completely confusing.
I think what you're going to tell me if I'm, this says that if you can add without an existing meter, without adding a meter, you can add.
No. What our our mantra now is no new units. I don't care if you're turning your basement and, you know, where you've already got 4 walls and you want to put an apartment down there, no new units. The interpretation that we have to make based on the way that the courts interpret language is in the old moratorium language. We could say you could have a new unit that you build in your existing home. I'm not talking about an addition. I'm talking about, and we've had numerous requests for this, that if you have a tap and it's adequately sized for both, you can put a new meter on. And I don't agree with you that we have not enforced meters. I know Dan Reardon people complain about him because he's so specific, and he's very aware of that meter requirement. So that has been, was it enforced years ago? Maybe not, but we got a little bit of presence at some point. So I hear what you're saying, and I don't agree with your interpretation.
Okay, so a new unit in a basement, is that a new commitment to supply water?
Yes, because you're.
That the moratorium specifically says no new commitment to supply water.
But it says no cell taps.
It's for
No.
new commitment to supply
No,
water.
We disagree that is interpreted.
Then we'll leave it to the lawyers.
Yeah. And unfortunately, we have to rely on attorneys in the courts. We can't take somebody who's not in the legal system's opinion.
Yeah, it has to be written into the law. It can't be vague in between the lines. It has to be written in the law. Yeah.
It is a.
Thanks. Could we conceivably incorporate the revised definitions and proposed changes in this petition into our existing code without adjusting the clarification that was made previously this year?
There you go.
Can you,
Probably.
Yeah,
Can you say that again?
Yeah, I
Okay.
don't understand what you're.
Why can't we do both, right? We have our initial moratorium, we have the clarifications that we did this year, 2023, I'm not sure what our ordinance number was, I apologize. And we have additional definitions that are proposed here. Are they incompatible?
But that's an attorney question.
Yeah.
That's what.
That was where my question was directed.
Why don't you make a motion to that effect, where we have the attorney investigate that, because the decision we're called on to make tonight is whether we send this to the voters or whether we rescind that's what our decision is tonight.
Unfortunately, we're running up against calendar issues that we cannot push this off.
Yeah.
You have to make a decision.
What calendar issues are we?
Can we let Nick answer this question? Would that be okay? Can comment on if there's some parts, because if you would agree with some of those parts and an attorney agrees, would further clarify, we can adopt those.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Sam, what's our restriction on time?
We have to do an IGA with Delta County for a special election, and they're also coming up against court meeting. And as soon as I approved the form of the petition, the special election calendar started. So Delta County would prefer to do an election in August if it's going to be done, so it doesn't interfere, but the time is ticking, and we have to do IGA. There's ballot language that has to go back and forth through everything, so it gets really limited.
Okay, so June, is that realistic as far as like finalizing language if it has to go to ballot?
I think Delta County would prefer it be a little faster than that, just because they have to do back-to-back elections.
Okay. Nick, do you think you might estimate how long it would take to answer my question?
Yeah, so here's another logistical issue first. So the board would have to adopt a resolution to order the special election. And that's the point at which you would need to set the ballot language. So the resolution would have the effect of calling the special election and setting the ballot title. So that's kind of what we're up against. And adding in those Delta County requests through the IDEA adds an additional time constraint. So what I'm hearing from the petitioner is that there are other issues in title or in chapter 13 that need to be addressed. And I agree with that. Does that mean that this ordinance clarifying the water moratorium didn't do something good? No, I don't think that that's what that means. I think there is other work that needs to be done in chapter 13. But yes, I mean, I think there is a possibility that there could be some changes made that if Mr. Bruner and if the petitioner, the other petitioner were willing to accept those, maybe it could avoid a special election here without the need of the board rescinding this ordinance. I think if we moved fast, we could achieve that based on the timeline that I'm hearing from Sam. But we would need to move fast, and it could ultimately be to no avail. So yeah,
Okay.
so we could try things.
Let's move fast. I move that we direct our attorney to produce an example incorporating the language in this. Do we have a name for it?
Ballot initiative.
Yeah, ballot initiative with the existing language for the moratorium as fully as possible.
Okay, do you have
Thank you.
do we have a second on
I'll
that?
second. So we can discuss. Second.
Okay. Discussion, yes.
So what your ballot, you want us to just go back to the original ballot language. That's essentially what this is asking. So
Actually, what I want is for you to do what he suggested. The problem's not the moratorium, the rest of the ordinance.
But I understand that, but right now, if we don't say we'll go back to the old language, you're gonna take it to the voters. That's
No,
what,
I'm not gonna take it forward. You're gonna take it forward.
here, please bear with me. So you went to the trouble to get us to go back to the old language of the moratorium. And if we do that and just do that, then you've opened up the floodgate, no pun intended, of people adding water to their houses.
I think you're misinterpreting the ordinance.
Well, you just heard that they
I
can't,
think she's misinterpreting.
the lawyers, if they just fought off lawyers with the new language, I think it's a pretty good thing here. So I'm saying we could just say, okay, we'll go back to the old moratorium and more water will be used.
If that's what you want to do.
No,
go
I
ahead.
don't want to do that, but this is, here, we have two choices here. So if we say, okay, we don't want to spend the money to go to the voters, we're gonna go back to the old language. And then in the meantime, let's try to fix with our attorney's help, chapter 13. So at a minimum, the language of the old moratorium is defined and can keep more water being used that we don't want used. Does that make sense? Like a definition for a service line, for instance. Because if we don't do what your petition is asking, it's going to the voters. But if we do what your petition is asking, we're gonna have more people using more water. So you put us between a rock and a hard place here, unless we do what you have just suggested.
May I speak to the motion?
Yeah.
Thank you. So I don't think that all these things are incompatible. It sounds like basically what I'm reading here is that there's several key subtle changes that are being proposed by Mr. Bruner and Ms. Patterson to clarify the language of the original ordinance. I presume that if we incorporate those key subtle changes to our existing language, that they will agree to stop the initiative. So why can't we do that? And if
I did
possible-
not see the difference in language.
Right.
Show me the difference
Yeah.
in the petition versus the original
Okay, yeah, my
moratorium. That's what I'm
understanding is
missing.
that,
That's what I'm missing.
Well, there's a couple of.
Can you give me a page
Yeah, you
number?
can do a side by side, it'd be more helpful, but I'm seeing additional requirements for termination. Part C, what are we looking at?
So
Part C, 1, 2. I'm sure there's a lot of, like, this reads quite differently than the original language. This isn't the same petition.
That's right.
Sorry.
I would suggest that one change you could make that would make a lot of difference in your water ordinance is just say that a tap fee is required for every unit.
Right.
I mean, that just makes it totally clear. Then now you can't sell the tap.
So,
And the idea that you can add living units without paying the tap fee is offensive. It's a huge mistake in the ordinance. That's the problem.
But what are you asking us to do in your referendum? I am completely confused. Summary of the affected measure. What summary of proposed
No,
referendum?
that's the boilerplate is required, that form is required to be put out. So it summarizes the effective measure. The effective measure is,
What do you want?
so the effective measure is the clarification you guys pass.
Right, so you want all that gone,
I want section 1 gone.
which is the whole thing. pretty
No,
much.
there's sections 2 and 3 that are nice, they're a good change.
Okay, hang on one second.
Trustee Smith, I would just say that, just to clarify, the two provisions that Mr. Brunner is talking about have to do with, they're essentially boilerplate of what I put into every single ordinance. And those, I don't know if they do much to serve, because they're talking about the ordinance clarifying the water moratorium. So without the rest of the language, they don't really have much of an effect. But I certainly would include that in any ordinance that we came to an agreement on, if that's the direction that the board wants to go with this. Those would be included again. They are important provisions of an ordinance. But essentially what this referendum would do, if referred to the voters and passed, is it would repeal the full ordinance. The substantive provisions of the ordinances, the ordinance that the board adopted earlier this year, the ordinance clarifying the moratorium, and it would revert back to the old language.
Okay.
That was passed by the voters in 2020.
Thank you. And that still leaves the conundrum of not being able to tell people no with the old moratorium language. So what you're suggesting is, in the meantime, let's very quickly come up with a definition that puts teeth back in the original moratorium language. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think really a red line between this language and the original moratorium would reveal the differences. And if those differences could be incorporated.
There are no differences. They're going back to the original, everything that's in section 1 that is underlined or struck.
No, I think what you're saying is that you could come up with a new clarification that the petitioners would probably sign on.
So in order, we'd have to very quickly come up with new language that fixes our chapter 13, section 1, which is pretty poorly written, some way to make it clear that what a service line is, in my opinion.
If that's the hang up, then yes.
That seems to be the hang up.
In count, yeah, you count to, there's definition of a count.
There's a number of different problems.
Right, there's several.
It's not just the
problems.
service line.
Yeah, count.
Well, why didn't you address the issues in your clarification?
This
No,
seemed
but why
to,
didn't you address the service line?
this was a way, I can't answer that question, but this was intended to clarify, and it has worked effectively to tell people no.
Perhaps with Leslie there, as soon as she's gone, it's gonna be a loophole.
No. Please have some faith in your church,
Come on, give me a break.
Yes.
Mayor, if so the term service line has been raised or used a lot tonight, and the actual term used in the 2020 moratorium was water delivery pipes, and that was giving rise to some confusion. I did talk to Mr. Brunner with Leslie, and what I realized is Mr. Brunner, and correct me if I'm wrong, if the mayor will allow it, but I believe what you were taking issue with was the fact that the definition of tap elsewhere in chapter 13 really only addressed the issue of tap fees, in your opinion, and didn't address the fact that the tap is not just the connection, the physical connection to the main, but it's also the extension of the line that goes to the property to serve the property with water service. Is that correct?
I think that's what the original moratorium lays out. And the water ordinance only has the physical connection reference. It doesn't have the common meaning of the term, which is the fee for the right to connect.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and I think prohibiting the connection to the town's water system has the effect overall of prohibiting additional water service being provided to a property that's already served. So I think there's room for common ground. And so if the board would be willing to direct me to draft take another crack at this in order to potentially have petitioners withdraw the petition, referendum petition, then I would be happy to do that.
We have to withdraw this in order for that to happen? No, okay, so good. No, I think this is very fair. Please proceed like that. Thank you.
That's the substance of my motion. Essentially, I'm seeing, I'm side by side right now. So, the underlined portions largely in the petition be incorporated, or they prepare an example of the underlying portions of the petitions be incorporated into our existing code, along with the clarification that we made earlier this year, if possible.
I don't think.
Get Leslie?
Oh. I'm not gonna respond to that question. I want to clarify what tap means.
Okay.
So what a tap is the purchase of a right to connect a private water service to the public pipe. It's the purchase of a right. It's not a property. It's not a piece of equipment. And the tap fee is to pay for the cost of making that connection. And usually, although Paonia is only covering the cost and not even that at times with the current tap fee, also covers future capital improvements, because the assumption is if you have a new tap, you're going to add to the, the need for water storage and water treatment and all that kind of stuff. The reason why I'm speaking up is that it is not efficient to have a tap for every unit. It slows our system down. It makes a whole lot more connections that we have to deal with when we're replacing water line. So that's why we allow a bigger tap to serve like an apartment building, and then they're individually metered. And so this is people are trying to simplify this too much, and not understanding how a water system works. So that's what we have to pay attention to, the physical system and how we serve a unit. Doesn't necessarily mean that we have to have a new tap, because then you've got taps for an apartment building. You could have 20 taps in the same place
Coming off.
that you don't want. So I just want to clarify what we're talking about in the physical world, not in the conceptual world. A tap is not a fee. The fee pays for the connection to the main line, and it usually also pays for future capital improvements that are caused by having a new tap.
One of those required for every dwelling unit. And that's not required. And that's the problem.
Which is contradictory to what you just said.
Right,
You
so,
don't want to
yeah,
tap,
actually,
you want a meter.
good, since we're gonna be distracted here. Leslie, you were saying that a tap is not the physical connection, it is the right to the connection, right?
It is a right to connection.
Okay, so
that's-
then, but then, like, further on in your sentence, you use tap to mean the physical connection. So I think that that's part of the complication here that we're trying to resolve, is that tap has multiple definitions. And the moratorium did not initially acknowledge that, but this revised petition does, by stating explicitly that tap has a definition in section 13.110, a physical service connection to the municipal domestic water supply distribution system.
And I'll show you how to, so this is why it gets complicated and why you can't make it so simple, is that, so you purchase the right, so we've got 98 people besides the Arc Coal taps. We had 98 people that have bought taps but don't have that physical connection yet. If they want to build a house and they have a tap, we have to let them do it because they've already purchased the right.
Right, so, yeah, that's.
What I'm
I
saying
understand.
is you don't want every unit, you do, for a single family unit or a business building that has a lot of different condos in it, you want one tap.
Yeah, I'm intimately familiar with this.
Yeah.
I apologize if I
Yeah.
seem a little tense, because this is an issue that I have raised with this board over the past 6 years. And I have never once had anybody resolve my complaints. So, yeah, I don't know, if we don't want to sort this thing out, then I guess we don't have to, but my motion there, I think we've been back and forth over it.
And
If
I
we want
just,
to try and sort it out, if we want Nick to try and arrange this so that we can incorporate the desired changes of these guys, vote yes. If you want to take it to ballot, vote no.
Okay. Leslie?
so I'm just gonna suggest, when we were revising this moratorium language, our only purpose was to make sure that we could tell people no. And that we would win in court. So, if we told people no, and I can, there are people that we still have one case, they may take us to court, I don't know. And what I would suggest is that we had understood, and that's why we brought it to the board, that you agreed with that. There should be no new water using units. Somebody can build a new bathroom in their existing home as long as their tap is big enough to serve. But if they want to put an apartment in the back of their unit, then they can't build it. So what I would suggest is that Nick, we did talk a little bit about some of the improvements to the ordinance that could be made to reinforce that. So I just want to explain, we went through, instead of arguing about taps and service lines, we went through what the intention of the moratorium was and crafted language that we thought meant the intention of the ordinance. And Nick has some ideas for some things that could further strengthen that, and that maybe we allow Nick to write those, and we have another meeting to discuss those and see if the petitioners would like that. I don't think we're going to come to an agreement on the interpretation of the code.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table to set this to Nick to see if he can.
His motion gets to that.
Right.
You're talking synonymous stuff.
Yeah.
Trying to, yeah.
Yeah, Sam, can you read back the motion, please?
A motion to direct the town attorney to produce an example of language incorporating the referendum petition, clarification ordinance, and original moratorium.
I think it's the original the resolution that we passed and just this ordinance.
That was the clarification.
Yeah.
Would it be useful to add to that also changes in the water ordinance to reinforce the intent here?
I don't know.
We just leave it to.
I think that's part of the whole deal at this point. Okay.
Mary, if I may, I think, here's what I'm likely going to do, if the board directs me to try and make some changes that will, sort of maybe allow the petitioners to withdraw the petition. I'm gonna look at all provisions of the code, attempt to make further clarification. And if I can make clarifications that the petitioners can agree to, great. But if not, I'm not going to bring back, I'm not going to bring back something that I don't think the board should adopt at the end of the day. So the board also has the option of rescinding the ordinance. I'm not suggesting that the board do that. The board could take this to a special election, but just so everyone knows and is on the same page, because the petition was received by the town, it was deemed adequate and the clock has started to run. It's also I'm sorry, I'm just trying to think while I speak. The petition also has the effect of staying the ordinance. So the clarification ordinance is no longer in effect right now. So we are stuck with the original language while we wait this out. And I think because of the concerns that Leslie and I have raised tonight with not being able to say no under the past language, I think there is urgency to try and draft some new language that might appease the petitioners tonight so that we can keep something in place that is enforceable and that we can reasonably say yes or no to when faced with property owners and developers.
There's a thing that's scaring me about this right now, is what I think I've just heard is that because we've received this petition and we're not making a decision tonight, then in essence, the one that we passed that tried to restrict it is no longer in effect. Is that right?
Yeah.
As soon as he turned it in on time, before the 30 days for the ordinance to take effect, it has not, the first part of this moratorium, the clarification ordinance has not been in effect at all.
Because it
was stopped by the referendum petition.
We did not know that.
So we haven't been able, so technically we shouldn't have been enforcing it then.
Wait a second. How does a citizen's petition have any effect on our actions as a board?
I can answer both of those questions. Sorry, Sam, I didn't mean to interrupt you. So ordinances take 30 days to take effect. They don't take effect if you receive a completed referendum petition. That's how the law, that's how you have to read the statute. And so that the referendum petition does have the effect of staying the ordinance, making it not effective. And then to Dave's question, you can enforce based on the pending ordinance doctrine until you receive the referendum petition, the completed referendum petition, and then you can no longer enforce the moratorium or the clarification ordinance based on the pending ordinance doctrine, because we know it's stayed now. So in effect, a citizen's initiative or a citizen's referendum petition, that is their right. So that's how they can interfere with board action. So I hope that answered everyone's questions.
Yeah, I see that.
So if I can finish. So in essence, if we do not send this to the voters or rescind tonight, then that's no longer in effect until we can get an answer from Nick. So, what this begs to me is finding out how long would that take to get an answer from you that would incorporate both. Because I don't like sticking in this. I think a lot of us are really at the point where we support the idea of a moratorium. We don't want to expand a lot of service until we really have a handle on it. I think we're all there together as a community that that's what we want. So if there's additional restrictions we need to add to what we have already passed, then yes, let's do that. But we're asking our attorney to speed it up so that we don't have this loophole, because technically, if someone's watching this video right now, it's one of those people, they could be coming in tomorrow and go, bang, I want my moratorium.
Give me my
like that.
Close the office for a week.
Judge, I'm sorry. All right, so,
Did I get it right?
That is, so I hesitate to say that's right, just because, Trustee Knudsen, we have been of the position this entire time that this ordinance has just served to clarify the moratorium that was passed in 2020. So the mantra is going to be the same. Anyone who comes in, we're going to say, no, this ordinance that's subject to this referendum was just clarifying the intent in the language of the moratorium. But it's always been that the moratorium is enforceable in this way. Whether that's something that, you know, we don't know. That's why we attempted to clarify.
Okay, so my hair isn't on fire.
I hope not.
all right, so we have a motion and a second to refer this to the attorney. All in favor?
Aye.
Yes,
Nay,
None?
nay.
All right, that motion passes. Okay, now, the question is this gonna come back at the next board meeting, or do we need a special meeting prior to that?
So, sorry, I didn't know if that was directed to me. I would suggest that we make this happen as soon as possible. I don't know if I could personally get to it this week. So I would say that next week is the likelihood for me in drafting this. I've got a lot of urgent things going on right now.
So the next meeting.
No, it'll be sometime next week. We'll set a special meeting for next week. All right, well, as soon as we find out what you've got, then we'll set a special meeting. All right, thank you. All right, let's move on. We're done. All right, resolution 2023-04, declaration of board of trustees vacancy. Can I get a motion? We have a lot of discussion on this one.
I move that we approve resolution 2023-04 is written.
Second,
Second.
discussion?
We need to have. No, it's in here.
All right, all in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. All right, next, the board,
Mayor,
yeah,
move to recess for 5 minutes.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
All right. Wherever it says.
Thank you.
9:05.
Thanks.
No, no. To let me. Probably that's the- You were the fire service. Yeah.
We got one trustee.
There you go. It's just a no. Okay.
Two trustees. No clerk. We're not even at 9:30.
Is John still on?
Well, he's still taking a break. There's our clerk. Sit closer. Oh. Yeah, I think it's introduction as well.
I thought.
Well, since we're waiting for John to get back online, you want to text John?
Can I make it, so it sounds like people are still having a hard time hearing me.
I know, that's why we need to get these two things.
Yeah,
done.
our protesters have not, they're gonna hear two voices, they're gonna hear you talking here and then the speaker later.
See that? No, the thing, the problem is, these two are gonna be our speakers for the room. Yeah, they can move up.
You can't hear us move forward,
Yeah.
because we're not gonna be able to fix it.
Not
If
tonight.
we put the speakers up, what's gonna happen is you're gonna hear them talk and then the speakers talk and we won't be able to understand anything.
Right, because there will be a significant delay between what I say and then what the speaker says, so. All right, there's John. Okay, so I forgot to add as we ran through the trustee vacancy, is that we are looking for letters of interest to be on the board of trustees. It will be advertised in several different places. Just a letter of interest, you have to have lived in the town of Paonia and be a registered voter for 12 consecutive months prior to applying. Yeah,
Nick, I think, wants to say something.
yeah.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks, Mayor. So the resolution that the board just approved has a blank in section 3. And I just wanted to make sure, no worries. I just wanted to make sure that the board addressed that issue. We used a prior resolution that the board had said that the board intended to fill the vacancy by appointment by no later than 14 days from the approval of the resolution. However, the statutes say that you have 60 days to order a special election. So you can insert whatever amount of days you have in that. But what I did was I added, however, the board shall have until the statutory deadline to fill the appointment. That way you can state your intent that you want to fill it earlier, but you'll actually have the 60 days. Does that make sense?
So my personal recommendation is that we fill this sooner rather than later. Because again, tonight, we're looking at, if John had a really bad day and couldn't show up, we would not have had a quorum again. So the sooner we can get this position filled, the more likely we will be able to conduct business. So I would suggest that we ask that we fill in 14 days. So by the next board meeting, so then the deadline for receiving letters would be Wednesday prior to the board meeting. That would be
Let's just say the Monday. And
The next board meeting is the 9th of May.
Right, so that would be the first of May? Oh, no.
If you've got them in a week by next Monday, you're probably gonna have a special meeting to talk about this moratorium language change.
Yeah,
So maybe we could do both, where you could consider the applicants at that special meeting and review the moratorium language.
well, if we give them a week, I mean, that would be the 3rd of May. Because we're not, because we're in the shopper ones, yeah.
I usually publish the packet on Fridays, and those would be easy enough to just get in there, so I mean, you can even give it until the 5th if you wanted to do it at the next meeting.
Yeah, I think we should give sufficient time for people to actually read it. It will be in the shopper tomorrow on the 26th. I'm assuming it will be up on the Facebook page and the town website and all of that stuff like tomorrow. If we wait till the 5th, it'll be in the shopper twice. The 5th, is that agreeable with the board? Okay. All right,
So procedurally, do we need to recall the motion?
or we can just do another motion saying the position will be filled for 14 days.
Yeah, from today. So, yeah, I move that we amend the resolution. And this was my hesitation as I read it, and I apologize for not being more thorough. Resolution 2023-04, part 3 to read, not later than 14 days after the approval of this resolution. That is not later than May 9th, 2023.
Okay, you have a second?
actually May 5th.
No, still,
Oh, filling it. Oh, sorry. Okay, yes, sorry.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
He darked it out. All, okay, opposed, all right, that motion passed. All right, thank you. All right, now on to the next thing. So we've been running with this board protocol since the end of January. And the one thing that I could not find resolution on, because I looked at that entire meeting and the meeting cut off before we had come to some solution or come to the conclusion on what we wanted to do about the work sessions. And I know my recollection of what we were going to do on work sessions was different from Dave's recollection of what we were going to do with work sessions. So I think we need to re-clarify that and decide if we want to continue using this format for another length of time and reevaluate, or if we want to change it. So let's take citizen comment first. Public comment.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Burke.
So this current format is an insult to the public. And personally, it just puts my impression of this board below ground. One of the only things that's been consistently good about the government in the town of Paonia over the time that I've lived here is that they listen to people. You can come in and you can make your spiel. You don't have to listen to the other people say, but you can have your say. And what I've seen under this administration has been a constant attempt to shut up critics, to shoot the messenger. And this latest revelation with the problem with the town's financial system makes me feel totally vindicated. The conflict that's been going on between the public and the board, that this current format is designed to try to stifle, has been the public saying, your staff doesn't know what they're doing. They're doing it wrong. This business with this books goes back to your previous administrator and your previous treasurer. This isn't a new thing. And you've been getting messages that there's problems in those areas all along, and your response has been to stifle public comment. And that's just not going to serve So I urge you, and one of the other things is to be forced to come up here and speak before you guys tip your hand. That is very intimidating to most people. And it's the response to what you guys say is what's important. That's what you need to hear. Not that I'm gonna guess what you're gonna talk about, and so I'm gonna give you my opinion before you say anything. That's cockamamie. It's when you explain what the issue is and talk about it, and then someone from the public wants to come up and say, yeah, well, or I like that idea, or you're off track. I urge you to go back to that format. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah, go on.
I really appreciated Mr. Bruner's comment. I agree with him completely. I would have made a completely different statement about the water. I mean, after I heard the direction you guys were going in and the explanation Leslie was giving, it's like, wow, something's really making a lot of sense here. And I would have liked to have added my comment as a citizen, and I feel like I wasted my time and your time by trying to comment at the beginning. I also want to say, I think there was discussion of having a really well-developed packet that we could refer to, so we knew exactly what the talking points were and stuff, and I'm not seeing that. It's not happened. You know, it's like, it's the way Paonia works. I mean, even the board, it's hard to like do all that homework beforehand, and you kind of feed off of each other, and ideas develop, and the topic develops and becomes more, I mean, it's more relevant or whatever. And how we're not mind readers, and so I find it really frustrating. And I want to agree with Bill. I think the public got a lot of slack, and then it turned into messaging by the media because, you know, having Corinne finally leave, do you realize how valuable it's been to have Leslie as the interim administrator right now? I mean, but it was because the kind of a overly loud public maybe, but if it wasn't that way, if we weren't always correcting things and bringing things to your attention, we'd still have the same old system in place and we'd be really crumbling. So, I mean, it's not like the public has to speak all the time. And I think you're going to see a natural adjustment, because the way it was just led to having to speak out, saying, no, no, no. I think you're going to see a natural adjustment. The public's not going to have to speak quite as much. But I think restoring it, trying it again for 6 months, the old way, might be kind of an interesting comparison. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none. All right. All right.
Well, I'll talk, and I'm gonna make some very unpopular statements. First of all, there are people that have been elected to represent. We have elected a representative government. This is not a town hall. So we're required as elected officials to try and represent everyone, not just the people that are in the room that are barking at us, but we have to think of all of our other citizens, who's missing from the room. So one of the proposals was, we have a work session where we try to hash it out at the beginning of the meeting. We spend about 30 minutes or 45 minutes hashing out the issues. So you as the public, you're not participating in that, but you're watching us. And then the meeting starts and you go, whoa, this is what I saw. This is, have you thought of this but? So I don't think we're on different pages here, but I really don't feel as an elected official that I've had the time to really deliberate with the other people that are required. We are required by law to try and represent the town. So that's what the different format was. The idea when we sat down and tried to figure out what would be the format of the meeting, we take the biggest issue that the board thinks and that the public has given us feedback on. What's an issue that we really need to sit down and hash out and have a discussion about? And set a work session for that. Then the public observes us hashing it out among ourselves. Then we go into regular session where the decisions slip to be made. And that's when the public at the beginning of that meeting can come in and say, so I think there's a way that it's both and not either or. But that's one thing that's really bothered me as elected official. And frankly, when I meet with other elected officials, and I went to an oil and gas conference, we get so much crap in Leonia for the way we're running a meeting. They say, what do you got, a town hall there? Is this New England? It's like every single thing gets commented on. And a lot of other board members say, you know, what we do is we take public comment in the beginning, we take public comment in the end, and that's it. We don't take public comment on every single item. I do appreciate but have you thought of those kind of comments? And I do appreciate what people bring to us where they've read the packets and they make discerned comments. But I think our format has exacerbated friction in our community. And the way it exacerbates friction is it allows for quick reactions. As human beings, we are triggered by things. And so our meeting format allows for triggers, and that's what I think sends us down the hole. So that's why I thought that our idea of the board deciding what is a huge issue, what do we need to have a work session on? We have that work session at the beginning of the meeting, everyone can watch. Then we go into regular session, and then we take public comment on trying to hash it out before we're taking action on it. And that would be a good medium. So that's where I'm coming from.
Other comments from the board?
Sure. Yeah, so, I guess to begin with, does anybody know when open public comment on each motion started?
No, Charles Stewart, I believe.
Oh, I don't know that, I would go back and talk to Neil because I
Yeah,
think.
when did we begin that process? Because I've never participated in another town government. And frankly, I don't really give a crap what other places do because I like the way that we did it before. I don't recall ever seeing you guys show up and make a public comment before you were on the board. I don't recall.
I've only been here for a couple of years.
Yeah, I've only been here 7 years now, so what do I know? But I've attended a lot of meetings and listened to a lot of public comment and made a couple myself initially. And what I found was that it's really valuable to have the collective experience of everybody in the room applied to the topic at hand. Because there are people here who were trustees long ago. There's a mayor pro tem over there, right? And they know things that I definitely don't know, that you guys don't know, and that they're happy to share with us to help us in our decision making. And I think, as I recall, in our previous discussion of how we ended up with comments in the front, was that what happens is it becomes a back and forth and it tends to be confrontational. And the hope was that by having public comment up front and then board comment, board discussion, is that we would eliminate the possibility of that back and forth so that we couldn't be confrontational. We would just say, okay, what do you think? Thank you very much. And then we'd have our discussion. I think that we've lost that benefit of the public knowledge, of the group knowledge, by eliminating the round. So really, again, and not to do the one size fits all thing, but I think that what we need is good chairing here. Because in this meeting, I've seen a whole bunch of back and forth across, and I've seen some heated stuff. I've seen a lot of people pipe up and interrupt, not be called. And I kind of feel like, despite having public comment up front, we're kind of in the same place we were before. So to answer the topic at hand, I don't think it really matters if we do it up front or in the back, if it's not gonna be enforced, if we're gonna have whatever we're calling these types of informal discussions, it's just gonna be this way. And if we wanna really change the procedure, we need to tighten up our chair. We need to have specific delegated times for everyone to speak. Everyone should be called. If you want to speak out of turn, I'm sorry, not yet. If you want to speak 3 times, I'm sorry, you can speak twice. And all of this is not to be mean to people or to get people to shut up, but to move forward, to get decisions made. So I propose for your consideration that we follow Robert's rules. When something is proposed, we go around to everybody gets to speak on it once. And essentially, what I think the way that I think it should work, it might work, is to say, we have a motion, right? The person who made the motion speaks to it. Anybody else on the board who wishes to speak to it may do so. Then at that time, we say go to the public, then we speak on it. And then we do one other round, do the same thing, and everybody speaks once, collect your thoughts. If somebody made a point that you'd like to respond to in the first round, this is your opportunity to do it. And then go around the second time, anybody wishes to speak a second time, even John, if he wants to say anything other than no, may speak to it. And again, finally the public, and then we vote. And that would eliminate all this back and forth. You know, you ask people at the beginning of this meeting to say, hey, everyone who speaks, speak to the mayor, right? Stick to that. It really works. In the meetings that I've been able to participate in, this is for the flag discussions especially, it really works. And as soon as you get people talking back and forth to each other, responding to each other, it breaks down into this confrontation. And just the direction, say, hey, no, we're talking mayor here. Right, and it takes everybody's back and forth away and smooths it all out. So, long story short, everybody speak twice, include the public last.
I agree with Thomas completely. I want to add one more thing that I'd like to consider, and that's to take the disbursements out of the consent agenda. I think the public should have the opportunity to ask questions about disbursements, and right now they can't. Thank you.
Okay. John?
Well, can you hear me?
Oh, wait.
We're good.
We need to
Okay.
Wait, we need to extend the meeting.
We do.
Yeah.
Go ahead, John.
Well, we need to extend the meeting.
Yeah, do
You
it.
can do that.
Oh, I propose we run the meeting till 10 o'clock. I move.
All right. Second,
Second,
all in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Okay. Motion passed. All right. Carry on, John.
We invoke the public a lot, people on the board and lots of people in the audience. But that's problematic. It gives, what we're arguing for here is to give a forum to people who I think don't just want to talk, but had an agenda to get rid of Corinne, to install certain people into the town, so forth and so on. And the fact of the matter is, I spend a lot of time with the other public at the senior center, and I teach a bunch of classes for Paonians, and you know, all this, that, and the other thing. And most of those people say they don't want to go to meetings because there's too much infighting and too much scheming and people dominating the conversation. And I think that's really destructive. When I showed up here 5 years ago, I did come to many, many meetings. as a matter of fact, and there were sometimes lines out the door, standing room only. But, typically, 15, 20 people here and in the audience. And everybody I talked to, I said, you gotta come over and, back us up on this and this and speak your mind. You've got some good thoughts. Are you kidding? I'm not going to those meetings. It's the same old bunch of people. So, I really hesitate to buy into any arguments that talk about the public until we're a little more honest about what the public is and what we're doing to the public. So everything I've heard so far in this argument is giving license to possibly that same small group of people or a small group of people to constantly vent and attack. And that's destructive. So I have been to a lot of meetings where you sign up in the beginning to speak, you speak, and then our county commissioners, that's all the other meetings in the county are run that way. You speak, and then the board members or commission members or whoever they are do their thing. So I'm just extremely dubious of a lot of the arguments here and what they really mean and the consequences of having everybody speak on every topic, agenda item. I think I've probably made enough enemies already. So I'll stop there.
Yeah. So I think we're getting to this probably a 2-2 vote and a tie, and we have a vacancy on the board.
Exactly. And
If we're bringing someone else on, they wouldn't be buying into whatever format we have, and they could help us figure this out. So, why should we try to decide this time? Why don't we just go to the next agenda item? We're not gonna get a good decision. We're
Yeah,
gonna get
I
more
would agree.
contention.
And the other thing I would agree with is that when we do bring a new person on, I don't think we should change our format for a while. Let them see it, let them take part in it, let them, if they have been to any meetings, they know what the old format was. Let them see and let's go with this one for a while, and then we'll reassess and move on. The only thing I would like to figure out is if we're going to do the work session thing, what is the work session? Because my understanding at the end of the 30th meeting was that the work session was we would open it up for discussion of any agenda item at the beginning. That if we had a hot topic that was coming up, then we would have a work session specifically on that hot topic. But by and large, when we look at our agenda for tonight, it's like, all right, we knew the water was going to be the hot topic. And that we would open it up at that point in time and just have an open discussion for a half an hour prior to the board meeting. That would be an interaction between the public and the board on the whole entire agenda. But we can put that off to a later time as well.
I think given the agenda we have tonight, let's just go to the next agenda item. I move we go to the next agenda item.
I'll second it.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
All right, that motion passes. All right, next up. Consideration of approval of contracting ADP for payroll and HR. Who'd like to talk to that, Leslie or Sandy?
So I'll just to make this brief, this is the service that would do our payroll, and I would recommend that we include the HR function. It's not HR law they're advising us on, it's just that they'll do new employee intake, make sure all the paperwork's done, which we have been remiss. So we need, and our personnel files don't have a lot of information like leave slips and all that stuff that should have been in there. So they'll kind of automate all that and we can, catch up and keep a record.
Okay.
And the price is right.
Okay. Information from the public or input from the public. All right. Motion from the board?
Yeah, I just had a question on, so we would be going for the 188.89.
And that's for payroll.
Right, and so that's for the year per employee, or I didn't know how much that meant.
That's
So
per payroll.
That's every 2 weeks.
26, no, wait, 24 payrolls per year.
Per payroll.
Yeah, so it's about 5,000.
Per payroll.
Dollars a year.
How many?
W-2s. It comes, it's around $6,000
Yeah.
a year, including W-2s.
Gotcha,
Yeah,
thank
so-
you.
Yes, Thomas.
Yeah, I move that we accept Leslie's suggestion, for the, what's the description of the product?
Payroll.
Yeah, run powered by ADP,
Complete payroll. and
yeah,
HR
complete payroll and HR plus,
Right.
including ZipRecruiter with 2 job slots. So, yeah, the way that I'm looking at this is, what we would pay, finance director, say, to do this job, and how much time they might spend doing it. I feel like would probably come out on top, even with the 188 plan versus the 130 whatever plan.
You have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion from the board? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
That motion passes. All right, next up is consideration of approval of ESRI renewal contract.
So this is our GIS system. It's just our annual fee. And so I'm gonna be more careful about bringing every contract to the board because really in the real world, you guys are supposed to approve all contracts. And I don't know if you've seen this one before, but yeah, we use it constantly. And I do want to mention at this time that we don't have our stormwater drainage system mapped. We talked to SGM today, and it's becoming more and more of an issue because as our clay pipe collapses, we need to know where our stormwater drainage is because we need to know the impacts of a collapsed sewer line on the stormwater drainage that goes to the river. So we talked to SGM today about kind of rapidly putting that together so we can get it on the GIS system.
Corey, did you have something to add to that?
I just wanted to reiterate how kind of important that is to us in the field. We can get line lengths from it while we're in the field from our phones. It's a super valuable tool for pretty much all of Public Works, and we can just click our phone and basically put where we put taps and that, kind of mark stuff up in GIS from our phones in the field. It'll help anybody else that comes even after us. They'll have useful data. It'll be something that we will definitely need long term. So this will come up yearly, every year.
Thank you, Corey. And I would say, just as grant writer, I have used it as well to, again, find line lengths for pipe lengths, to stick in grants, to get.
This will come up yearly, every year.
Corey?
No.
What is that?
Is the owl doing it again?
The owl's making Corey talk again,
Yeah.
because he's muted.
But I use it for like GPS coordinates and maps too, so, all right.
Yeah, I move that we approve the renewal for ESRI.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Everybody? Okay. All right, next is consideration of approval to hire hourly seasonal workers for plants.
Okay, so there are 10 planters out on the street and they were planted, I think, 2 years ago. So I just wanted to bring up the idea of planting them again this year. And I talked to the bank on the corner, United Colorado Bank. They plant their own. And I think UBB, United Business Bank, has one, and they plant their own as well. So while all this was in the agenda packet, Joanne contacted Leslie and said that she would be willing to be the person who waters. And that was approved by Matt. So we have a built-in staff person who would water them, because that was the big issue, because if they don't get water. So I would just like to know if you would like to make a motion. Well, first of all, let me say, so Shane and I will plant them. Shane will design them. We'll put $100 in for the flowers. We can get them at cost from Paonia Farm and Home. So go ahead, Liz.
So the problem with that is that we've talked a little bit about hiring employees for a lower paying job. And we would have to work that out. I have to discuss that with Nick and the finance director, because I've been advised by past town treasurers that are schooled in governmental accounting and labor law, that you cannot pay people at 2 different rates. There might be a way we can work that out. I don't know, but I want to talk to both Michelle and to Nick before we went ahead with doing the employee. There might be a way you get around that. I just want to make sure, because this has come up on other towns that I've worked for, where they've had an employee employed in 2 different roles at different pay rates, and it is a possible problem with labor law. So I just need to look into it a little bit more before we decide who we're going to hire.
I'm sorry, I didn't even think about.
I thought of that later.
After our email, okay,
Because we
fine.
talked about this in regard to another employee, and this is not my area of expertise, but I want to just make sure that we're exactly right. And
Okay, well, let's get public input.
And let me just throw out another thing then, hearing this, so then the other alternative I have put in my email is to hire somebody by contract to be responsible for watering all the planters. And I wanted to say, if we end up going that route and the trustees approve, it would be really nice to get some work done on those peony beds. That would be a big job. There are 8 of them and they're in terrible shape. But if we could only afford so much, I think it'd be really nice to get some work done on that corner garden bed at the entrance to Town Park where the statue is. It looks horrible. So that would be a lesser contract to get with someone. But that, to me, I'd just like to bring that up after we get the answer to this, as an alternative to get planters planted in the beds. And Shane and I would still be willing to help get plants at cost, et cetera. We can talk more. I just thought it'd be nice to get some color in those planters.
All right, public input. Yes,
Well, so I'll say enough's enough. Under this administration, the budget for this town is more than double. I would say it is almost triple. Okay, and I don't see any extra services that are very needed. All over town, if you want flowers in your front yard, you plant your own flowers. You got a whole street full of these businesses that are always begging for perks. I say let them plant their own flowers. If you have to hire somebody else, please don't do it. If there, if there's enough money, it's like there's people that can't pay the water bill now, and you're gonna hire somebody else to tend weeds? It's like, please, don't do it.
thank you. Yeah, that's one.
I have to take care of my own right of way. I've got to take care of the town alley, half the town alley, 100 feet along my property, 120 feet, 18 feet deep in front of my property, and Delta Street I weed. And then I've got to maintain street trees on my property, on town property, I'm sorry. I think I would be so excited to see Shane involved in planting your planters, because he's an incredible garden designer and being part of the Botanic Gardens in Cheyenne. But I'd like to see a volunteer effort of the shopkeepers downtown saying, heck, yeah, we'll water those. We'll be proud to water those if you beautify the streets. And they're only 1 on each corner. It's not like a lot, correct? 8, okay. The Chamber of Commerce used to do this job. it was kind of keeping the business area looking good. And I kind of like to see that community interaction, again, of community support. Also, it would be nice to see shopkeepers pulling the lettuce grass weeds that grow 6 feet tall in the cracks in front of their businesses too. So if we could emphasize that, that would be nice. The parks contractor used to do some of this work. They used to do the peony beds in front, which is now concrete, but parks contractor probably would have been doing this landscape. And, you know, the minor statue, we might want to look at what our parks contract said at one point and maybe aim for that type of structure again. So we're not burdening the public works all the time. Maybe next year. Thanks.
Yeah.
I like the idea of community volunteers helping, and we did that last year with cart out in the front, and then Corey was nice enough to help us put the irrigation, hook it up. We ran all the hardscape, and so we have master gardeners, we have a lot of gardening people in this community. So I think if maybe one person was designated to coordinate, because it would need coordination, and then to bring in community. My husband and I grow tons of plants that we could donate. I know you guys do the same thing. There's a lot of people like that. So I think it is a really good opportunity for people to participate rather than it all being taken care of, because then you feel like, you know, you're part of it and you're proud. So.
Thank you. Anyone else? Trent.
I'm Shereen Patterson, Rio Grande. I would say instead of adding new things, and I agree with Ben, would love to see Shane do some great stuff. But the state of the parks is deplorable, especially this park, especially the back corner. It's disgusting. It's got trash since 3 weeks. Food, all kind of things, leaves that haven't been raked. The bench is in a deplorable condition. It's ugly. It looks like mildew. So why are you starting something totally new when you have stuff already done off in a wrong way? That's not even being taken care of or anything.
Anyone else? All right.
The only thing I want to add is that I think getting everybody together to plant is is a great thing. The problem is keeping them watered. And that's where if you don't have that, and it's not easy, you can't just carry jugs of water around. So that was the piece about having somebody that would be guaranteeing they would water those pots, those planters. Because I don't think I would encourage them being planted if we didn't have that in place. So that was the piece for having someone being paid to do it, so it got done.
And that was the thought was, you know, maybe get a high school student. If you could find a dependable high school student.
That would be kind of like the contract. Yeah. No, and that would be good, but if they gotta get paid.
Yeah, of course they got to get paid.
So that's usually you have to pay somebody, especially on weekends and holidays.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so whatever.
Yeah.
To echo Ms. Watson's sentiment, if you own a piece of property that abuts the public right of way, you're responsible for caring for that right of way. To my understanding, even though you don't own it. So really, if we want to take the simple solution here, we can ask the local businesses if that have these planters in front of them to do what the First Colorado does and tend to them. And I don't expect that they're all going to look that good, but maybe that's not a bad thing, you know, to say, hey, you can make it what you want, but make it clear that they're responsible for it. And you know, if we want to have a program or a coordinator of some sort to say, hey, let's, you know, they're all going to be like this. We'll help you do it. You have to maintain it, or do what you want. You grow cactus, and then you don't have to water it. like whatever floats your boat. But I think it's a good opportunity to beautify town. I've seen trash in a bunch of these. I feel like the one on the corner in front of Nido now was removed. Is that right? I think that one's gone. Used to be one there. But you know, it's just not very attractive. I understand the appeal, the desire to improve it. And it's good that we have so many interested parties. I am concerned that we're gonna pay somebody, what, an hour a day to walk around, drive a truck around, like how is this gonna happen? Yeah, the logistics of it are not cheap. So maybe we can, the young community can say, hey, can you pick up our planters? And for my part, I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing in front of my place, but that's not public stuff, it's on my little strip. You know?
Sounds like we need to just get that answer about Joanne at a minimum before there's anything to vote on. And then just, I'd say let's continue this.
Okay.
Make a motion to continue it to another meeting.
In the meantime, we call for volunteers.
Well, that, you'd have to.
Well, we have Lynn Hall as a volunteer.
Right.
That's the problem. That's the problem.
Yeah, and I don't know that I want to be the volunteer coordinator necessarily either. Just,
Well, then you're talking staff.
yeah, right, well, yeah, let's continue it and see what bubbles up.
Was there a second? Was there a second on that?
No,
I second it.
All right,
Johnson.
all in favor of continuing?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that passes. Okay, board discussion of town position on Jumbo Mountain Trail.
I'm sure we can finish this in 3 minutes.
Go ahead.
So,
Well, you
basically,
know, Dave, let's do this. I mean, let's, the sidewalk key ballot issue, we have time constraints on that as far as getting that language in.
Yeah, but they're not, it's not urgent.
Okay, all right, go ahead.
okay. Basically, we let the BLM do during a couple public sessions. They were asking for comments being given by April 10th, which we're kind of behind April 10th. We didn't make any comments. There were well thought out comments that our Board of Commissioners made. I think we as the town of Paonia ought to at least take a position and send a letter to the BLM indicating our position. So the purpose of putting this on the agenda tonight was so that the trustees could say, Apple Valley is a critical part of this, and that's part of town property. So we should at least weigh in on the parts of the BLM plan and have a statement from the town that we submit to BLM. So that's why I put it on the agenda.
Okay.
And I included at the very end of this huge long packet, people complain about the length of the packet, but basically the 2 key parts are, there's the commissioner's letter, and then I added my own personal letter so people could see at least where I was coming from it. And from those 2 letters, you might be able to get some pointers that you think would be something we can include in the Paonia position. I put the entire BLM packet in there. And if you read it, you're a better person than me because I didn't go all the way through it. But I read the section D quite thoroughly.
All right, input from the public. Yes, Liz.
So Western Slope Conservation had quite a gathering around this, and they had, you know, four or five, I can't remember, suggestions. And those would be really good ones to look at. And then what I would just caution is that off the road vehicles, if you start letting that happen in this town, you're gonna end up with a Moab. And we have people from Moab moving here because they lived there 30 years and watched it be destroyed. And one of the different proposals for the BLM includes allowing off-the-road vehicles. So I do think it's important for the town to take a look at it and to comment. I think it's very important.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yep. All right.
Yeah, I've been a user of Jumbo Mountain for a long, long time, and I heartily agree with the idea of seasonal closures for wildlife and things like that. I personally stay out of there, basically Halloween to Easter, because there were so many animals sheltering in there, and dogs getting in there a problem. There's no access now for motorized vehicles, and they shouldn't be allowed. One of the factors to deal with is the Green Gate, where you go through to gain access there, has a specific contractual language that prohibits guns going through there. So retrieval of game, there's no prohibition on that now. If they can find some other way to get in there to take the game, they can go in there and carry pieces out through the Green Gate, but they can't go in through the Green Gate to go on it, and they can't take a motorized vehicle to retrieve their game. And I don't think the town should sign off on that. I think for the long-term solution there, there's the plan, civic planning 101 is you don't have two neighborhoods with a culvert under a creek or over a creek where you have only one road that goes in and out. The plan was always to have that go through. And it was a dirty deal that it came down that gate wound up being closed there. And that should be open. There's no reason that it's not open. And then there's the land just next to that closed gate that's a waste area, basically. And I think the town should condemn that for the public use of a parking area to stage for Jumbo Mountain. And that would take, because people aren't going to always go from Apple Valley. That's unrealistic. And it's a problem having them playing their radios and stuff right next to the houses there. If the parking area was just on the other side of that fence, that'd solve a lot of problems.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
My name's Rick Beers, and I do live in Apple Valley. Apple Valley has no sidewalks. We have people walking up and down that street in the middle of the street all the time. To go up and use the BLM property, as well as go along the ditch, which is being used for years as just a nice walking trail, which it is, we use it. But parking is a problem. I know the people at the top of the road complain a lot. There's multiple vehicles, people picnicking up there right where they park their cars. So if you're doing something, I don't know what the proposal is with BLM land, but I know that that's involved in it. And something needs to be done to address that area. The parking is a real issue, and people walking up the street, if they're parking in Apple Valley Park, I've heard that's been suggested. It really doesn't work very well if you don't have sidewalks going up there. Personally, I want sidewalks going across the front of my property, but that may be what it needs. So just want the town to maybe consider that.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Well, being we have 1.5 minutes left.
You can't do it in 3.
And we still have another agenda item.
We're already,
Yes.
we already have missed the deadline.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like I could safely say what my comment would be, simply because I don't think we have discussed, or the BLM hasn't come to the town of Paonia and discussed the effects on Apple Valley of it becoming a parking area. And it seems like that has to be done before they could ever implement either any of the alternatives that talk about Apple Valley Park.
Well, it's not their jurisdiction, so it seems to be, yeah.
I mean, it's kind of a moot point,
Yeah.
because they can't do anything without visiting with us first.
Well, and my personal take on it is that Apple Valley Park is the town's concern. That BLM is not going to come to us and talk to us about Apple Valley Park because it's not their jurisdiction. And so they're not going to talk to us about it. Now, Paonia and Motion did address it, but we have 15 seconds left. So either we extend the meeting or we adjourn.
I'd like to make a motion, to extend the meeting at least 5 minutes. so we can decide what we're gonna do, if we're gonna pass on this or not.
Second? Anyone?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Dave?
Okay.
John?
Aye.
All right, that motion passes.
So I defer to you, Dave, because I don't know exactly what the town, where we would land as a town.
Draw up a letter from what I've heard tonight. And that would be something for your next meeting to look at.
Yeah, I think we have two issues. We have the top of Town American and the Apple Valley. Those are the two issues that really do impact the town as far as our concern is. Correct. I mean, we can say whatever we want to about what we want to happen on Temple Mountain. But it's not, you know,
I'll draw a draft up.
Thank you.
thank you. All right, last is the sidewalk fee ballot renewal language.
I don't think we need to decide this tonight, am I correct? So if you want to postpone that, we can put this on the next meeting, but be aware that the sidewalk fee is expiring this year. We are not collecting enough money because there was no escalator built in, so we're collecting at 10 years ago rates. And we're only bringing in 30,000, and the reason why they didn't do sidewalk improvements last year is 30,000 is not enough to hardly do anything. So, if we want, I think what you all need to be thinking about, and what we can do is look at our capital improvement plan and give you an idea of how much that you should be collecting per year to try and actually rebuild sidewalks that need to be rebuilding. And then you can have that conversation. But Sam, do you know when you need to get that ballot language done to send it to the county?
I'm gonna say it's gonna kind of probably run along the same lines. We're gonna need to have something concrete by September. So it's gonna, if not before, hopefully.
So you have plenty of time, but you know this will be controversial. So I would urge you not to waste the best.
Could I make a motion on this? I'd like to make a motion that we ask there to be some data in addition to the old ballot language. I think the public would like to know what sidewalks have been fixed since 2014. And because there would have been, let me just leave it at that, some data on what sidewalks were fixed. Okay, and how much was spent, when, how often, each year.
Okay, data on what sidewalks are fixed, how much was spent per year. Right, you have a second?
Second.
Discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, that motion passes. All right. I adjourn this meeting. Thank you, everyone.